Ma kezdődik a világ vezetőinek történelmi pere. Ma kezdődik a világ vezetőinek történelmi pere.
A különleges ügyész bizonyítékokat terjeszt a bíróság bírái elé, amelyekben vádat emel Robert Prevost, Leo, pápa, Charles Windsor, Charles, király, Egyesült Államok ellen.
Donald Trump elnök, Mark Rutte NATO főtitkár és 9 másik ember elleni bűncselekményekért. A bíróság hivatalos frissítése. Kiadva 2025. szeptember 1-én, hétfőn 19 óra GMT-kor. Nem titkolt nyugat-európai helyről tudósít. Néhányan a rituálisan meggyilkolt 9. kör áldozatai közül, fent.
És néhány gyilkosuk, Robert Prevost, a jövő, Leo, pápa, Jeffrey Epstein és Donald Trump, lent. Mark Rutte, NATO főtitkár, és King, Charles Windsor, lent.
Néhány ilyen gyermek meggyilkolásának helyszíne emberi vadászpartikon, Brüsszeltől délre. Sok hónapos nyomozás után a Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság büntetőeljárást indított a legfelsőbb egyházi, kormányzati és vállalati tisztviselők ellen. A vád, részvétel szörnyű emberiség elleni bűncselekményekben, beleértve a rituális nemi erőszakot, kínzást és gyermekek meggyilkolását. Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedikt, 2013. Februári történelmi vádemelését és hivatalából való kizárását követően a bíróság a nemzetközi jog értelmében felhatalmazást kapott arra, hogy vádat emeljen. Elítélje és megbüntesse a legutóbbi ügyben megnevezett 13 vádlottat. A bíróság 5 elnöklő bírója európai és amerikai igazságügyi szakértő. A nürnbergi jogi precedensek szerint működő különleges bíróságot alkotnak, amely lehetővé teszi bármely személy büntetőeljárás lefolytatását, beleértve az egyház és államfőket is. Ami különösen erős az ügyünkben, az az, hogy ezeket a vádlottakat rövidesen bűnösnek találhatják anélkül, hogy valaha is bíróság elé állnának. Mert kapcsolatban állnak a római katolikus egyház és annak 9. kör gyermekáldozati kultusza nevű, már elítélt transznacionális bűnszervezettel, mondta a bíróság különleges ügyésze ma. Tehát, akárcsak az egyes auschwitzi SS tisztek, akik parancsnoki felelősséget viseltek ezekért az atrocitásokért, a 13 vádlottat is bűnösnek tekintik mindaddig, amíg be nem bizonyítják ártatlanságukat, mert egy gyilkos, bűnszövetkezetet vezetnek és részt vesznek abban. Ezért a vádlottak feladata, hogy megcáfolják az ellenük felhozott vádakat, különben a törvény teljes súlyával kell szembenézniük. E tekintetben és a nemzetközi jog előírásainak megfelelően a bíróság aktívan felkészíti a bíróság által helyettesített rendőri és félkatonai erőket a 13 vádlott elleni ítélet végrehajtására. Ez a végrehajtás magában foglalja a bűnösök bebörtönzését, a 9. kör szertartásainak bezárását, a bűnösök vagyonának kisajátítását, valamint bűnügyi intézményeik felszámolását. Eltökélt szándékunk, hogy bezárjuk ezt a gyermekgyilkos kultuszt és az azt támogató bírákat, papokat, rendőröket, politikusokat és bankárokat, mondta az ügyész. Ez a munka a próba eredményétől függetlenül folytatódik. A perrobbanás veszélyes aspektusa, hogy az egyik elsődleges vádlott a NATO főtitkára, Mark Rutte, akit a 9. körben fentesei és túlélői éppen a hollandiai Zwolle-ban 2012-ben és 2014-ben végzett rituálék résztvevőjeként azonosítottak. Miközben a világ a NATO és Oroszország közötti esetleges háborúra készül, a Mark Rutte, Donald Trump és más magasrangú nyugati politikusok elleni bizonyítékok geopolitikai porhordónak minősülnek. Miután a bíróság bírái ma megkapták az ügyészi jelentést, és megerősítették a vádlottak névsorát és az ellenük felhozott vádakat, megjelenési idézést adnak ki a vádlottaknak. A bíróság előtti megjelenés megtagadása vagy elmulasztása azt jelzi, hogy a vádlottak nem vitatják és nem támadják meg az ellenük felhozott vádakat, és azonnali bűnös ítélet jogszerűen hozható. Ezt követően bírósági elfogató parancsot lehet kiadni letartóztatásukra, valamint ingatlanaik és vagyonuk lefoglalására. A bíróság a korai szakaszában zárt eljárást fog lefolytatni, de a nyilvánosság és a média rendelkezésére bocsátja a szemtanúk vallomásait és egyéb bizonyítékokat. Igazságügyi megfigyelők és több kormány képviselői vesznek részt a bírósági eljárásokban. A tárgyalás előre haladtával álljon készen a sajtóközleményekre és a bíróság jelentéseire, szintén közzétéve a címen www.murderbydecree.com ITCCS frissítések alatt. A Számvevőszék 2025. augusztus 9-i első időközi jelentésének megtekintéséhez lásd http://url. A Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság George Dufort titkárán keresztül érhető el a címen itchoffice@protonmail.com. A bíróság 2025. szeptember 1-én, hétfőn adta ki globális sajtóközleményként. A Nemzetek Törvénye alapján 2010. június 15-én létrehozott de jure nyilvántartási bíróság. A vezető tisztségviselőket emberiesség elleni bűncselekményekkel vádolják. A vezető tisztségviselőket emberiesség elleni bűncselekményekkel vádolják. Leo pápát, Donald Trumpot, Mark Rutte NATO vezetőt és 10 másikat nemzetközi bíróság elé idéznek. 2025. szeptember 8 hétfő, GMT. Brüsszel. Az egyházi, kormányzati és vállalati vezetőket ma nyilvánosan megvádolták gyermekkereskedelemben és gyilkosságban való részvétellel, és idézést adtak ki, hogy válaszoljanak a vádakra a bíróságon jövő hétfőn, szeptember 15-én. Az idézés másolata következik. Megrendelés a megjelenésre. Ezt a nyilvános idézést a következő összeesküvőtársaknak adják ki. Az emberiség elleni bűncselekményekben. Robert Prevost, aka, 14. Leo pápa. Mark Rutte, a NATO főtitkára. Charles Windsor, aka, 3. Károly király. Andrew Windsor, aka, Andrew, herceg. Justin Welby, Canterbury érseke. Donald Trump, az Egyesült Államok elnöke. Keith Schiller, Donald Trump korábbi asszisztense. Albert Bourla, a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals vezérigazgatója. Fred Hiltz, Kanada egykori anglikán primása. Pietro Parolin, a római egyház bíborosa. Timothy Dolan, a római egyház bíborosa. Bernard Marx, a római egyház bíborosa. Gary Patterson, a kanadai Egyesült Egyház korábbi moderátora. Ezennel elrendeljük, hogy jelenjen meg e-bíróság előtt 2025. Szeptember 15-én, hétfőn, hogy válaszoljon azokra a büntetőjogi vádakra, amelyekben aktívan részt vett a gyermekek és felnőttek emberkereskedelemében és kultikus rituális nemi erőszakában, kínzásában és meggyilkolásában, és hogy továbbra ezt teszi. Legyen tanácsos figyelembe véve a bizonyított bűnszervezetekkel való jelenlegi kapcsolatát. A bíróság előtti megjelenés vagy az idézésre való válaszadás elmulasztása jogalapként értelmezhető pro confesso bűntudat és kényszeríti az ön és bűntársai elleni letartóztatási és helyreállítási parancsok kiadását. Ezt a végzést a nemzetközi jog alapján adják ki, és teljes ereje és hatása van. Ezt a végzést a bíróság esküdt serifjei hajtják végre. Kiadta 2025. Szeptember 8-án, hétfőn a büntetőeljárási osztály. A Nemzetközi Közös Jog Bíróságának. Aláírva, megerősítve és az eredetiben bélyegezve. Bernard J. Ogilvy, Ph.D., LLM, elnöklő bíró. George Dufort, LLB, a bíróság titkára. 08092025A001 számú bírósági írat. itchoffice@protonmail.com. Jegyzet, ezt a megjelenési parancsot minden vádlottnak kézbesítik. Nyilvános bemutatásának ténye egyben a vádlott jogi idézését is jelenti. Külön közölték velük annak részleteit, hogy mikor és hol kell megjelenniük a bíróság előtt. A háttérért lásd www.murderbydecree.com az ITCCS frissítések alatt. Donald Trump a gyerekoltásokról, ezek mind mérgek. Az összes az, plusz videó.
Az egyik vegyület károsíthatja a veséket, a légzőrendszert, a bőrt, az idegrendszert.
Vajon az USA elnöke miért most és miért pont ebben a formában hívta fel a figyelmet a gyermekoltások veszélyeire? Lehet, hogy hamarosan kiderül. Mi az abszolút szkizofrénia? Amikor az oltásimádó, fideszes Trump-hívőknek Trump azt mondja, minden gyerekoltás méreg. Valószínűleg ezzel a tudathasadással szembesülhetett tegnap az oltásipart gátlástalanul kiszolgáló összes fideszes médiatermék, amikor imádott hősük. Donald Trump, az Amerikai Egyesült Államok elnöke azt a bejegyzést tette a gyerekoltásokra vonatkozóan, hogy ezek mind mérgek. Az összes az. Ehhez Trump egy videót is mellékelt, amelyben orvosok figyelmeztetnek az oltóanyagok veszélyeire, például a bennük lévő tiomerzál vegyületre, amelyet higanytartalma miatt az idegrendszeri fejlődési rendellenességekhez, többek között az autizmushoz kötik. A videóban az egyik orvos felemel egy kis edényt, és világosan elmondja a veszélyt.
Mutasd meg nekik a tiomerzált, amit fémtartályban tartunk, mert félünk tőle, ez egy nagyon finom por, ez a tiomerzál, amit nagyon mérgezőnek tartanak.
Halmozódó hatása van. Majd az orvos felolvassa a vegyületet tartalmazó edényen található figyelmeztetést.
Károsíthatja a veséket, a légzőrendszert, a bőrt, az idegrendszert. Reproduktív és fejlődési toxicitást okozhat, ami azt jelenti, hogy olyan mellékhatásai lehetnek, mint az autizmus és más idegrendszeri fejlődési rendellenességek.
Ez egy felfoghatatlanul mérgező anyag. A videó ezt követően ezeket a veszélyeket az injekciókon keresztül történő valós veszélyekhez köti. És ez az a vegyület, amely a vakcinában van. Az oltóanyag nagyon veszélyes, mert közvetlenül beadják az emberi szervezetbe. A videóban az influenza elleni oltásokra is kitérnek. Talán a legnagyobb higanyexpozíciót legalábbis az Egyesült Államokban az influenza elleni vakcina jelenti. Az influenza elleni vakcinát ma már minden várandós nőnek, minden csecsemőnek, minden gyermeknek évente ajánlják. Hozzáteszik, hogy a tiomerzált sokszor nem steril gyártási folyamatok során keverik bele az oltásokba. Minden egyes lépésnél tiomerzált adnak hozzá, mert a gyár nem tiszta és nem steril. Egész idő alatt tiomerzára vagy valami hasonlóra van szükség. Ezt le kell állítani.
A videóban egy oltóorvos is megszólalt, aki megdöbbent a hallottaktól, azt mondta, nem tudta, mit ad be, nem volt tisztában az oltás veszélyeivel. Néhány nappal ezelőtt hívtam fel a figyelmet arra az elhallgatott hírre, amely szerint a kötelező gyermekoltások eltörlését szorgalmazza Matteo Salvini, Olaszország miniszterelnök helyettese.
Mint fogalmazott.
A legtöbb európai országban nincsenek kötelező védőoltások, ezért nem hiszem, hogy a megkérdőjelezésük tudományellenes lenne, sőt szerintem ez az észszerű.
Mindeközben Magyarországon napokon belül kötelező módon a 6. és 7. osztályos gyerekeket kezdik majd vakcinázni. Ráadásul erre úgy kötelezik a kisgyereket, hogy semmilyen tudományos bizonyíték nincs a hatékonyságra. Donald Trump bejegyzésével kapcsolatban érdemes feltenni a kérdést, vajon miért most és miért pont ebben a formában hívta fel a figyelmet a gyermekoltások veszélyeire. Minden bizonnyal ennek az okát rövid időn belül megtudjuk.
Show them the thimerosal bomb, which we keep in a metal container because we're a little afraid of it, and it's a very fine powder.
This is thimerosal, which is labeled very toxic, has cumulative effects, can cause damage to the kidneys, to the respiratory system, skin, to the nervous system. It specifically warns on here that it can cause reproductive and developmental toxicity, meaning that it can cause things like autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. This is immensely toxic stuff.
And it's
And this is what's in the vaccine. It's important to realize we're talking about a whole range of products. Vaccines are a big one because, of course, you're directly injecting it. For example, this is tetanus vaccine. This one expires. It's a little outdated now in 2007. Here's the thimerosal. 1 to 10,000 is a preservative. Perhaps the biggest one in the U.S., at least, that's for exposure to mercury is the influenza vaccine. Influenza vaccine is now recommended for all pregnant women, all infants, all children. On a yearly basis, you're supposed to
have
get
last
that shot.
year's influenza? Understand that thimerosal is not added at the end. It's not like, well, that factory next year can make thimerosal free. Thimerosal, you either have to have a thimerosal-free factory or you have to not have one. They add thimerosal at each step because the factory is not clean and not sterile. So you either have to have an expensive sterile factory where you don't need thimerosal, or you have to have one that produces thimerosal. It's going to need thimerosal or something the whole time. It needs to be stopped.
This is the influenza vaccine from Adventist Pasteur, their flu zone. Thimerosal, 25 micrograms of mercury per dose.
I'd like to point out that a lot of people didn't know, and I'm one of them. I've given 2,000 Rogam shots. I've been in vaccines for 35 years. I didn't know that Rogam had thimerosal in it. So I think a lot of the doctors were unaware. They were unaware that even the word thimerosal meant mercury.
Pál első levele a korintusiakhoz, 8. rész. A bálványáldozati hús kérdése. Ami pedig a bálványáldozati húst illeti, tudjuk, hogy mindnyájunknak van ismerete. Az ismeret felfúvalkodottá tesz, a szeretet pedig épít. Ha valaki azt gondolja, hogy ismer valamit, az még semmit sem ismert meg úgy, ahogyan ismerni kell. De ha valaki szereti Istent, azt már ismeri Isten. Ami tehát a bálványáldozati hús evését illeti, tudjuk, hogy nincs bálvány a világon, és hogy Isten sincs más, csak egy. Mert ha vannak is úgynevezett istenek, akár az égben, akár a földön, mint ahogyan sok Isten és sok Úr van, nekünk mégis egyetlen Istenünk az Atya, akitől van a mindenség, mi is ő érte, és egyetlen Úrunk Jézus Krisztus, aki által van a mindenség, mi is ő általa. Viszont nem mindenkiben van meg ez az ismeret, sőt némelyek a bálványimádás régi szokása szerint a húst még mindig bálványáldozati húsként eszik, és lelkiismeretük, mivel erőtlen, beszennyeződik. A Jelenések könyve, 18. rész. A nagy Babilon bukásának kihirdetése. Ezek után láttam, hogy egy másik angyal leszállt a mennyből, nagy hatalma volt, és dicsősége beragyogta a földet, és ezt kiáltotta erős hangon: elesett, elesett a nagy Babilon, amely ördögök lakóhelyévé lett, és minden tisztátalan lélek, minden tisztátalan madár, és minden tisztátalan és utálatos állatrejtek helyévé lett. Mert féktelen paráznaságának borából ivott minden nemzet, vele paráználkodtak a föld királyai, és eldőzsölt javaiból gazdagodtak meg a föld kereskedői. Hallottam, hogy egy másik hang szól az égből: menjetek ki belőle, én népem, hogy ne legyetek részesek bűneiben, és hogy a rámért csapások ne érjenek titeket, mert bűnei felhalmozódtak az égig, és megemlékezett Isten az ő gonoszságairól. Fizessetek meg neki, ahogyan ő fizetett, és kétszeresét adjátok vissza a cselekedetei szerint, a pohárba, amelyet ő megtöltött, töltsetek neki kétszeresen. Amilyen mértékben dicsőítette magát és dőzsölt, annyi kínnal és gyásszal fizessetek meg neki, mert szívében ezt mondja: fenségesen ülök itt, mint egy királynő, özvegy nem vagyok, gyászt sem látok soha. Ezért egyetlen napon jönnek rá a csapások, halál, gyász és éhínség, és tűzben fog elpusztulni, mert erős Úr az Isten, aki megítéli őt. Sírni és gyászolni fognak miatta a föld királyai, akik vele paráználkodtak és dőzsöltek, amikor látják a tűzvész füstjét. Gyötrelmétől való félelmükben távol megállva így szólnak: jaj, jaj, te nagyváros Babilon, te erős város, egyetlen óra alatt ért utol az ítélet. A föld kereskedői is sírnak és gyászolnak miatta, mert áruikat senki sem vásárolja többé, az aranyat és az ezüstöt, a drágakövet és a gyöngyöt, a gyolcsot és a bíbort, a selyem és karlátárukat, a különféle tujafákat és az elefántcsontárgyakat, a különféle nemes fából vagy ércből, vasból és márványból készült eszközöket, a fahéjat, a balzsamot, a füstölőszereket, a kenőcsöket és a tömjént, a bort és az olajat, a finomlisztet és a gabonát, a marhákat és a juhokat, a lovakat és a kocsikat, a rabszolgákat és a foglyokat. A haszon, amelyre lelked vágyott, eltűnt előled, minden bőség és pompa elpusztult körülötted, és nyomuk sem lesz többé. Akik ezekkel kereskedtek, és ezekből gazdagodtak meg, gyötrelmétől félve távol megállnak, sírnak és gyászolnak, és így szólnak: jaj, jaj a nagy városnak, amely gyolcsba, bíborba és karlátba volt öltözve, arannyal, drágakővel és gyöngyel volt ékesítve, mert egyetlen óra alatt pusztult el ekkora gazdagság. És a kormányosok, a hajósok, az evezősök és akik a tengeren dolgoznak, mind megálltak távol, és amikor látták a tűzvész füstjét, így kiáltoztak: van-e hasonló a nagyvároshoz? És port hintettek fejükre, és sírva, gyászolva kiáltoztak: jaj, jaj a nagy városnak, ahol az ő jólétéből meggazdagodott mindenki, akinek hajói voltak a tengeren, egyetlen óra alatt elpusztult. Örülj neki, te menj, és örüljetek ti szentek, apostolok és próféták, mert Isten végrehajtotta rajta az ítéletet, értetek. Egy erős angyal felemelt egy akkora követ, mint egy nagy malomkő, bedobta a tengerbe, és így szólt: így vettetik le Babilon, a nagyváros, egyetlen lendülettel, és nyoma sem lesz többé. Nem hallatszik benned többé hárfások és zenészek, fuvolások és trombitások hangja, nem lesz benned többé egyetlen mesterség, egyetlen mestere sem, és malom zúgása sem hallatszik többé benned, és nem világít benned többé lámpás fénye, nem hallatszik benned többé vűlegény és mennyasszony szava, mert kereskedőid a föld hatalmasai voltak, mert a te varázslásodtól tévejedett el valamennyi nép. De benne találtatott a próféták és a szentek vére, és mindazoké, akik megölettek a földön. A Jelenések könyve, 19. rész. Öröm a mennyben, Babilon bukásán. Ezek után hallottam, mintha nagy sokaság hatalmas hangon szólna a mennyben: halleluja, az üdvösség, a dicsőség és a hatalom a mi Istenünké, mert igazak és igazságosak az ő ítéletei, mert elítélte a nagy paráznát, aki paráznaságával megrontotta a földet, mert számon kérte kezéből szolgái vérét. Még egyszer mondták: halleluja, felszáll a füstje is örökkön örökké. Ekkor leborult a 24 vén és a 4 élőlény, imádták Istent, aki a trónon ül, és így szóltak: Ámen, halleluja. És megszólalt egy hang a trón felől: Dicsérjétek Istenünket, ti szolgái mindnyájan, akik félitek őt, kicsinyek és nagyok. A bárány menyegzője. És hallottam valami nagy sokaság hangját, amely mintha nagy vizek zúgása és erős mennydörgés hangja volna. Halleluja, mert uralkodik az Úr, a mi Istenünk, a mindenható. Örüljünk és újjongjunk, és dicsőítsük őt, mert eljött a bárány menyegzője, felkészült mennyasszonya, és megadatott neki, hogy felöltözzék fényes, tiszta gyolcsba. Ez a gyolcs a szentek igaz cselekedeteit jelenti. Így szólt hozzám: írd meg, boldogok, akik hivatalosak a bárány menyegzőjének vacsorájára. Ezt is mondta nekem: ezek Isten igaz igéi. És leborultam a lába elé, hogy imádjam őt, de így szólt hozzám: vigyázz, ne tedd! Szolgatársad vagyok, és testvéreidé is, akikben megvan Jézus bizonyságtétele. Istent imádd, mert a Jézusról való bizonyságtétel a prófétaság lelke. Krisztus megjelenése. És láttam a megnyílt eget, íme egy fehér ló, és aki rajta ül, annak neve hű és igaz, mert igazságosan ítél és harcol, szeme tűzlángja, és fején sok korona, és ráírva egy név, amelyet senki sem ismer rajta kívül, és véráztatta ruhába volt öltözve. Ez a név adatott neki, az Isten igéje. A mennyei seregek követték őt fehér lovakon, tiszta fehér gyolcsba öltözve. Szájából éles kard jött ki, hogy megverje vele a népeket, mert ő vasveszővel fogja pásztorolni őket, és ő tapossa majd a mindenható Isten búsult haragjának borsajtóját. Ruhájára és derekára ez a név van írva: királyoknak királya és uraknak ura. A 2 vadállat és a hamis próféta vége. És láttam, hogy egy angyal áll a napban, aki hatalmas hangon kiáltott minden madárhoz, amely fenn a magasban repül: jöjjetek, gyülekezzetek össze az Isten nagy lakomájára, hogy királyok, vezérek és hatalmasok húsát egyétek, lovak húsát és a rajta ülőkét, minden szabad ember és rabszolga húsát, kicsinyekét és nagyokét. És láttam, hogy a fenevad, a föld királyai és seregeik gyülekeznek, hogy harcra keljenek a lovon ülő és serege ellen. De foglyul esett a fenevad, és vele együtt a hamis próféta, aki a csodákat tette az ő színe előtt, amelyekkel megtévesztette azokat, akik a fenevad bélyegét magukra vették, és imádták annak képmását, élve vettetett mind a 2 a kénnel égő tűztavába. A többiek pedig megölettek a lovon ülő kardjával, amely a szájából jött ki, és a madarak mind jól laktak az ő húsukból. A jelenések könyve, 20. rész. Krisztus 1000 éves uralma. És láttam, hogy egy angyal leszállt a mennyből, az alvilág kulcsa volt nála, és egy nagy lánc a kezében. Megragadta a sárkányt, az ősi kígyót, aki az ördög és a Sátán, és megkötözte 1000 esztendőre, levetette az alvilágba, bezárta, és pecsétet tett rá, hogy meg ne tévessze többé a népeket, amíg el nem telik az 1000 esztendő, azután el kell oldoztatnia majd egy kis időre. És láttam trónokat, ezekre ültek azok, akik ítélő hatalmat kaptak, és azoknak a lelkeit is, akiknek fejüket vették a Jézusról való bizonyságtételért és az Isten igéjéért, akik nem imádták a fenevadat, sem az ő képmását, és nem vették fel az ő bélyegét homlokukra és kezükre, ezek életre keltek, és uralkodtak a Krisztussal 1000 esztendeig. A többi halott nem kelt életre, míg el nem telt az 1000 esztendő, ez az első feltámadás. Boldog és szent az, akinek része van az első feltámadásban. Ezeken nincs hatalma a második halálnak, hanem az Isten és a Krisztus papjai lesznek, és vele fognak uralkodni 1000 esztendeig. Góg és Magóg. Amikor pedig eltelik az 1000 esztendő, a Sátán elbocsáttatik börtönéből, és elmegy, hogy megtévessze a népeket a föld 4 sarkán, Gógot és Magógot, hogy összegyűjtse háborúra őket, akiknek annyi a száma, mint a tenger fövenye, és felvonultak a föld színén, és bekerítették a szentek táborát és a szeretett várost, de tűz szállott alá az égből, és elpusztította őket. Az ördög pedig, aki megtévesztette őket, a tüzes és kénes tóba vettetett, ahol a fenevad és a hamis próféta is van, és gyötrődnek éjjel és nappal, örökkön örökké. a halottak feltámadása és az utolsó ítélet. És láttam egy nagy fehér trónt és a rajta ülőt. Színe elől elfutott a föld és az ég, és nem maradt számukra hely, és láttam, hogy a halottak, nagyok és kicsinyek a trón előtt állnak, és könyvek nyittattak ki. Egy másik könyv is kinyittatott, az életkönyve, és a halottak a könyvekben írottak alapján ítéltettek meg cselekedeteik szerint. A tenger kiadta a benne levő halottakat, a halál és a pokol is kiadták a náluk levő halottakat, és megítéltetett mindenki a maga cselekedetei szerint, és a halál és a pokol belevettetett a tűztavába. Ez a második halál, a tűztava. Ha valaki nem volt beírva az életkönyvébe, az a tűztavába vettetett. A Jelenések könyve 21. rész. Új ég és új föld. És láttam új eget és új földet, mert az első ég és az első föld elmúlt, és a tenger sincs többé, és a szent várost, az új Jeruzsálemet is láttam, amint alászáll a mennyből az Istentől, felkészítve, mint egy menyasszony, aki férje számára van felékesítve. Hallottam, hogy egy hatalmas hang szól a trón felől, íme, Isten sátora az emberekkel van, és ő velük fog lakni, ők pedig népei lesznek, és maga Isten lesz velük, és letöröl minden könnyet a szemükről, és halál sem lesz többé, sem gyász, sem jajkiáltás, sem fájdalom nem lesz többé, mert az elsők elmúltak. A trónon ülő ezt mondta, íme, újjáteremtek mindent, és így szólt, írd meg, mert ezek az igék megbízhatók és igazak, és ezt mondta nekem, megtörtént. Én vagyok az alfa és az omega, a kezdet és a vég. Én adok majd a szomjazónak az életvizének forrásából ingyen, aki győz, örökölni fogja mindezt, és Istene leszek annak, az pedig fiam lesz. De a gyáváknak és hitetleneknek, az utálatosaknak, gyilkosoknak és paráznáknak, a varázslóknak és bálványimádóknak, és minden hazugnak a tűzzel és kénnel égő tóban lesz a helye, ez a második halál. Az új Jeruzsálem. És jött egy a 7 angyal közül, akiknél a 7 pohár volt, telve a 7 utolsó csapással, és így szólt hozzám. Jöjj, megmutatom neked a mennyasszonyt, a bárány feleségét. Elvitt engem lélekben egy nagy és magas hegyre, és megmutatta nekem a szent várost, Jeruzsálemet, amely Istentől, a mennyből szállt alá, telve Isten dicsőségével. Ragyogása hasonló volt a legértékesebb drágakőhöz, a kristályfényű jáspishoz, fala nagy volt és magas, 12 kapuja volt, előttük 12 angyal, és a kapukra nevek írva, Izrael fiai 12 törzsének nevei, kelet felől 3 kapu, észak felől 3 kapu, dél felől 3 kapu, és nyugat felől 3 kapu. A város falának 12 alapköve volt, és azokon a bárány 12 apostolának 12 neve. Aki velem beszélt, annál volt egy arany mérővessző, hogy megmérje a várost, annak kapuit és falát. A város 4 szögletű volt, és a hossza annyi, mint a szélessége, és megmérte a várost a mérővesszővel. 12 000 futam, hossza, szélessége és magassága egyenlő. Megmérte a falát is, 144 könyök, emberi mértékkel, amely az angyalé is. Falának építőanyaga jáspis, és a város színarany, tiszta üveghez hasonló. A város falának alapköveit mindenféle drágakő ékesítette. Az első alapkő jáspis, a második zafír, a harmadik kalcedon, a negyedik smaragd, az 5. szárdonix, a 6. karneol, a 7. krizolit, a 8. beril, a 9. topáz, a 10. krizopráz, a 11. játszint, a 12. ametiszt. A 12 kapu 12 gyöngy volt, a kapuk mindegyike egy-egy gyöngyből, és a város utcája színarany, mint az átlátszó üveg. Nem láttam templomot a városban, mert a mindenható Úristen és a bárány annak a temploma, és a városnak nincs szüksége a napra, sem a holdra, hogy világítsanak neki, mert az Isten dicsősége világosította meg, és lámpása a bárány, a népek az ő világosságában fognak járni, és a föld királyai odaviszik be dicsőségüket, kapuit nem zárják be nappal, éjszaka pedig nem lesz. A népek odaviszik be kincseiket és gazdagságukat, tisztátalanok pedig nem jutnak be oda, sem olyanok, akik utálatosságot vagy hazugságot cselekszenek, hanem csak azok, akik be vannak írva a bárány életkönyvébe. A Jelenések könyve, 22. rész, az életvize és az életfája. Azután megmutatta nekem az életvizének folyóját, amely ragyogó, mint a kristály, és az Isten és a bárány trónjából ered. A város főútjának közepén, a folyó két ága között van az életfája, amely 12-szer hoz termést, minden egyes hónapban megadja termését, és a fa levelei a népek gyógyítására szolgálnak, és semmi nem lesz többé játok alatt a városban, hanem az Isten és a bárány trónja lesz benne, szolgái imádják őt, és látni fogják az ő arcát, és az ő neve lesz a homlokukon. Éjszaka sem lesz többé, és nem lesz szükségük lámpásra, sem napvilágra, mert az Úristen fénylik fölöttük, és uralkodnak örökkön örökké. A prófécia beteljesedése közel van. És ezt mondta nekem, ezek az igék megbízhatók és igazak, mert az Úr a próféták lelkének Istene küldte el angyalát, hogy megmutassa szolgáinak mindezt, aminek hamarosan meg kell történnie. És íme eljövök hamar, boldog, aki megtartja e könyv prófétai igéit. Én, János, hallottam és láttam ezeket, és amikor hallottam és láttam, leborultam az angyal lába előtt, hogy imádjam őt, aki megmutatta nekem ezeket, de ő így szólt hozzám, vigyázz, ne tedd, mert szolgatásad vagyok neked és testvéreidnek, a prófétáknak és azoknak, akik megtartják e könyv igéit. Istent imádd. És így szólt hozzám, ne pecsételd le e könyv prófétai igéit, mert az idő közel van. Aki gonosz, legyen gonosz ezután is, és aki bűntől szennyes, legyen szennyes ezután is, de aki igaz, cselekedjék igazságot ezután is, és aki szent, legyen szent ezután is. Íme eljövök hamar, velem van az én jutalmam, és megfizetek mindenkinek a cselekedete szerint. Én vagyok az alfa és az omega, az első és az utolsó, a kezdet és a vég. Boldogok, akik megmossák ruhájukat, mert joguk lesz az életfájához, és bemennek a kapukon a városba. Kívül maradnak az ebek, a varázslók és a paráznák, a gyilkosok és a bálványimádók, és mindenki, aki szereti és cselekszi a hazugságot. Én, Jézus küldtem el angyalomat, hogy ezekről bizonyságot tegyen nektek a gyülekezetek előtt. Én vagyok Dávid gyökere és újhajtása, a fényes hajnalcsillag. A lélek és a mennyasszony így szól, jöjj, aki csak hallja, az is mondja, jöjj, aki szomjazik, jöjjön. Aki akarja, vegye az életvizét ingyen. Én bizonyságot teszek mindenkinek, aki a prófécia eme könyvének beszédeit hallja. Ha valaki hozzátesz ezekhez, arra Isten azokat a csapásokat bocsátja, amelyek meg vannak írva ebben a könyvben. Ha pedig valaki elvesz-e prófétai könyv igéiből, attól Isten elveszi az osztályrészét az életfájából, a Szentvárosból, és mindabból, ami meg van írva ebben a könyvben. Így szól az, aki ezekről bizonyságot tesz. Bizony, hamar eljövök. Ámen, jöjj, Uram Jézus! Az Úr Jézus kegyelme legyen mindnyájatokkal. Ámen.
This series that has just generated so much interest with people. Not only has Kevin deconstructed the horrors of the Catholic Church and the Vatican, last week we went over to the Mormon Church, and a lot of people have been asking questions about the Vatican's ninth circle, secret society, cult, call it whatever you want, the horrors that are performed. So this week, Kevin is going to keep us up to date on all of his latest news. And we're also going to take a deep dive into the Vatican's ninth circle. Please don't forget, all of Kevin's links are in the description box. Please support his important work. He's risking his life talking about these things. He's had attempts on his life. He's told us about these things over the years. And we really appreciate that. And you're supporting him by buying his books as well. So all the links are down there. But perhaps we should start with what's your latest news, Kevin?
Well, the big news this week, hi again, Sean and everyone. It's great to be back, as always. We talked several shows ago about the convening of this International Common Law Court based on the new evidence about so-called Pope Leo, his ties with the Ninth Circle when he was ordained a priest in 1978. And after that, the court judges actually met for the first time last Monday. And I was on a Zoom call with them and the public prosecutor they've appointed. Now, these are European folks. They were involved in our previous court case, and they're veterans of all of this. And not only this issue, but the whole attempt to bring justice outside the existing court system, which is totally compromised on these things. So we met, and one of the first things we did is the prosecutor has actually interviewed two of the eyewitnesses I spoke about earlier, the German woman who saw Robert Prevost, the present Pope Leo, at two ceremonies of the Ninth Circle, where she claimed he sexually assaulted her, spread blood on her from the baby they had just sacrificed, that kind of thing. And the Ninth Circle member who had come forward, an old man in his 80s who has taken advantage of the amnesty offered by the court. This is blanket amnesty for anyone who provides evidence. So we're on the basis of that, we're realizing we have to expand our kind of the purpose of this court. It isn't simply to bring another case. We realize that the reason these crimes carry on, Sean, is because there's a whole political, religious, financial infrastructure that supports them. You know, the existing governments, the courts, the churches, the banks. And so we need to create, as we've done before, our own separate jurisdiction outside all of that in order to take action. One of the things, for example, deputizing police to go in and stop these ceremonies, to make the arrests, to shut it down, in other words. So we don't want to dabble around. We want to go and just stop this whole system. And so it's a big effort and requires everybody's help in that. So that's kind of a background to what I want to talk about today. That picture you flashed on the screen, that was actually one of our old witnesses, Toos Nienhuis. And she was raised in the Ninth Circle. She's a Dutch woman. I met her a number of times in Holland. She's standing at the site where she was taken as a child. This is in a forest south of Brussels. She said she was taken there. The Belgian army had surrounded it and protected the ritual going on there. And she claimed that Queen Beatrix of Holland had provided teenagers from youth detention centers who were part of the human hunting party that took place there. The spot she's standing is where the children were brought and burned alive. Some of them, others eviscerated and killed and eaten, like in the Ninth Circle ceremonies. And so that was the spot. That picture, I think, is from about 2013. But it's, you know, an example of one of the witnesses. That's Toos in one of our interviews. Her testimony is actually up online. You can see it on YouTube, amazingly enough. But this is an example of what we're looking at. Now, let me go into some of the new evidence that the prosecutor has kind of vetted and allowed to be released. We can't name specific places or individuals' names at this point, but one of the pictures I did put up there is a place we can mention. It's called the Schloss Hollinghofen. It's a castle near Arnsberg, Germany. And it's where the German eyewitness, this woman, nope, that's the Vancouver Club. We'll get to that. That's in Canada. That's another Ninth Circle site. That's we've got.
Oh, I think I found it.
That's it. The Schloss Hollinghofen. Now, our German eyewitness said she was taken there as a young child many times because she was born and raised in the cult. And you see, they kill the eldest child of the family, sponsoring family, and then they use other children. They call them the goats that lead the sheep to the sacrifice. And it's interesting they use those terms, goats and sheep. It's not only out of the Bible, but MKUltra experiments in America and other places used exactly that same expression. That sheep are the people they use in the experiments, and the goat are the family members who lure them in and compromise them to be so that they can use. So that's what we mean by this infrastructure around it. It isn't just a bunch of loonies. They've got a whole system in place to protect them, legally, politically, and every way, religiously. And so anyway, at this Schloss Hollinghofen, this guy called Cardinal Franz Hengsbach, and I sent you his picture. He conducted the ceremony where she saw a little boy, 4 years old, first assaulted and horribly tortured and then killed by this man. And at the same thing, the same ceremony, they brought in a baby who was barely 1 year old and did the same thing to the baby, if you can imagine that. penetrating a baby, and it's like beyond belief, but this is part of the ritual. The higher you go up in the ninth circle cult, the more grisly the experiment, the ritual is, and the more they test people. So if you're in the higher echelons, kind of like a 33rd degree Mason, if you're in the higher echelons in the ninth circle, like this guy, you're all standing there naked, covered in the blood of your victim. They go into the ceremony, and if you're not willing to rape and torture and violate these little newborn babies, you're instantly killed yourself. Your throat is cut and your blood is used. And our German eyewitness described that happening, including at the ceremony in 1978, where the present Pope was inducted into the Ninth Circle cult with John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła. And so this individual is one of the, unfortunately, he died in 1991, this cardinal. But before they die, they have this ritual whereby they believe their soul can be passed on to the next person in line in the Ninth Circle cult. And they did this ceremony, and we can't release the name of the person he passed it on to, but it's another high Roman cleric, also from Germany. And so another thing this witness said is there was a doctor working closely with the church nearby, and he had beneath his house, there was a basement area, and it was kind of like a gymnasium, but when you go in there, there's a secret door, and in the wall, an extended wall, was a whole area where they kept the children in cages. And also they did these things, they're like bloodletting ceremonies, but also they had all these nuns taking blood from children before they were killed. And, they talk about blood samples, DNA samples all the time in developing ethnically targeted bioweapons, things like that. The military's done that all over the world. And so this is what I mean about it has a military application too. They were experimenting on these children, not just using them in these arcane ceremonies. So that's some of what the prosecutor has come up already in just less than 1 week. And we've had indications that there are more people, including in Interpol, and like I mentioned before, the Italian government, who have their own files on the Ninth Circle, but they've been ready or kind of waiting for the right environment in which to release these things.
So let's go over this Ninth Circle a bit more slowly then, Kevin.
Yeah.
When was it first introduced, the Ninth Circle?
Vatican records describe it being formed in the time of the Jesuits in the 1500s. And the Jesuits using it as a political device to control popes, cardinals, and kings and politicians all over Europe. And so don't forget, the Jesuits were formed to kill Queen Elizabeth I. That was their first kind of act. She was the only Protestant monarch opposing Rome. And the Spanish, about the Spanish Armada trying to invade England, that Jesuits were formed right at that time as a secret army. And this is one of the weapons of the secret army, right? They also based it on very old Roman rituals, which we've talked about. And that's, that energy center in Rome, and the Jesuit headquarters right down the road from St. Peter's Square. It's literally on the same street, the San Lorenzo Church. That was where the first Ninth Circle ceremonies were actually held. And that's from Vatican records. Also, other references over the centuries, eyewitnesses describing that. And it's sprouted all over the world now. It goes by different names. Like, as I'll talk about in a while, that picture of the Vancouver Club. In Canada, it's called the 12 Mile Club. And that's because they operate, when we shone a light on the Vancouver Club back in the 90s, they moved their practices offshore onto yachts. And then they go outside the 12-mile territorial limit, dump the bodies. Yeah, that's the spot. Now, I've actually, recently, we've been talking to city workers in Vancouver, because this building right downtown Vancouver on the waterfront, it's perched above the vast kind of tunnel network that exists under Vancouver. Dating from about the 1880s, when the city was first founded, the early bootleggers used these tunnels to bring in the booze. But then later, the government and the churches and that took it over, because all of the major churches run right along that axis, along what's called Burrard Street. It's like an energy line. And all these churches, we began to protest that. No wonder the police began to get very paranoid and started making arrests when this happened, when other people began protesting, because it's right at the center of kind of demonic activity in Vancouver. Now, we have interviewed people who came out there of that at early on a Saturday morning, children who were taken in Friday night, limousines that go to the Squamish Indian Reservation right across the sound from this building, and brought in. I mean, all of that is in murderbydecree.com. We had that aspect thoroughly documented. But recently, these city workers have agreed to take our investigators down into the tunnels right under that Vancouver club. One of these guys whose testimony I heard was too scared to talk about what they had found down there. But, you know, based on past experiences in these tunnels, you know, it'll be undoubtedly linked to these sacrificial rituals and the kind of thing that the other witnesses have described in Europe.
So you said then that they lifted the term from Dante's Inferno, and just to expand on that, it says here, the ninth circle of hell, the deepest and most horrifying, is a frozen wasteland reserved for traitors. The circle is divided into 4 subcircles, each with a specific type of betrayal. Those who dwell here are frozen in a lake of ice, with the depth of their immersion determining the severity of their punishment. So whose idea was it then? Do you know who originated with?
Well, Dante Alighieri, the Italian poet who wrote that in the 14th century, it was interesting. He was actually a confidant of various popes. He was an insider in the Vatican, so he knew what he was talking about. And ironically, you know, in some of the censored writing, which is, he wrote it as a poem in order to conceal as well. So he wasn't killed, but he's referring to Vatican practices, and the most heinous sin is to betray the trust of a child, to betray innocence, either within ourselves or in the world. That's what Satan likes the best. You know, it's in terms of grabbing souls. If you like, the essence of a human being is their innocence, their godlike relation with children and each other. And if you betray that and sacrifice that, you get ultimate satanic power. That's the belief. So it comes from that, but it's even deeper because it has to do with, you know, things that people have alluded to, but there hasn't been a lot of hard evidence on, but having to do with energy captivation, definitely subterranean portals that open up and energetic portals. One of the ninth circle practices in Arizona is near, you know, the Vatican Observatory they have there.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So it's built right on the land where the Anasazi or the Apache native people say in their oral traditions, the sky opened many centuries ago, long before the whites came. The sky opened and dragon people came through to subvert and destroy humanity. And that's where they build the Vatican Observatory. And it's one of the areas in America where more children go missing than anywhere else. And a lot of them disappear off the Indian reservations. And, you know, we've had social workers who've talked to us. We've had cops who go in there to try to find out about it. And they got shut down by the FBI like that. I mean, it's instant arrest, you know, smear campaign, the usual thing they do, incarceration, all that. So, I mean, that's another piece of it, right? But it shows you how global this thing is.
Let me just add a bit more to that then. So the ninth circle is dedicated to those who betrayed trust, whether to their families, their countries, or their benefactors. The circle is further divided into 4 rings based on the type of betrayal committed. The first one is C-A-I-N-A, named after the biblical Cain. This ring is for those who betrayed family members. Next one is A-N-T-E-N-O-R-A, named after Antenor of Troy. This ring is for those who betrayed their political or national allegiances. And then P-T-O-L-O-M-E-A. This ring is for those who betrayed their hosts or guests, often by killing them after receiving their hospitality. And then we've got J-U-D-E-C-C-A. The innermost ring where Satan himself is located is for those who betrayed the benefactors or masters, including Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius. Those in the ninth circle are frozen in a lake of ice, with the depth of their immersion reflecting the severity of their betrayal. The worst sinners, those in Judea, are entirely encased in the ice. Satan, the embodiment of evil, resides in the center of the ninth circle, where he eternally chews on Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. Dante, as he descends into the ninth circle, expresses fear and even remains silent in Satan's presence, a marked departure from his usual curiosity and questioning. Wow.
Now, what's interesting about that is you see there's different agendas at all times kind of mixed up. Like in the Bible, you've got multiple books and messages stuck together into one book. Now, here, for example, they say the worst traitors are Brutus and Cassius. Well, they were actually, in the light of history, they were actually the good guys. They were trying to get rid of Caesar, who was trying to have absolute authority, like a pope does, right? So the Vatican agenda is in there to say, don't overthrow a monarch. That's a bad thing, right? And they're going to go to hell. So there's kind of the church message in there, but it's designed to obfuscate and confuse the other message, which is that you notice in that the official account, there's no mention of children. There's no mention of our betrayal of our own soul, like you see. And so you got to pick out the particle of truth and a lot of the fogging that goes around and the institutional kind of message that's in there, which is slaves never disobey your master, never challenge authority, never challenge, a king or a pope or whatever. That's what's in the official kind of Dante or the Inferno thing, designed to instill fear in the masses of people and have them keep going to church, right? So you got to separate that from kind of the thread that runs through this, which is that by naming it the ninth circle, they're saying we are harnessing the forces of Satan. And that's why, like I mentioned before, the present Pope, when he took his vow as a priest in October 1978, he also took the vow to the ninth circle at the same time to serve both. And, that's part of this whole thing.
So what year approximately did they incorporate this into the church?
Somewhere, I believe it was before the time of the Jesuits. I believe it was in the High Middle Ages, so I would say like 12th, 13th century at least. Although, because it's based on Roman practices, the practice of it is much older. It's thousands of years old. It just has that particular spin on it since the Middle Ages. Because don't forget, that's when there began to be opposition developing within the church about papal practices, and it's what led to the Reformation. Another link to me is my ancestors in Italy, their last name was Arnati, Arnati. And we, around the 13th century, when that book was written, we had to flee into France because we were what were called Waldensians. And the Waldensians were the early Protestants. They said, we don't need the Pope, we don't need practices, we're just going to leave like the Bible tells us to. And they got horribly persecuted and burned out of Italy, just like we were later in France, right? Kind of always on the move. But so I mean, it's an old, it's a response to dissonance within the church, who start challenging it like so many people are doing now, challenging this false religion. Right?
So if you were to list the purposes of the ninth circle in the church, what would that list look like? It's
mushroomed from an original arcane practice of, like I say, political control. It's a huge financial operation now. It's tied in with the military, whereby we know that the military has used these ceremonies for experimental purposes. The big thrust of, as we know, a lot of the MKUltra and other experiments for many decades has been, how do you control the human mind so that people can continue to function but have no critical reasoning left? Don't have the ability to say, they've lost the ability to resist, say no, or act on their convictions. They meddle with the pain threshold in the human mind and all that to find out the limits of these things. The Nazis began that. They came over to America under Project Paperclip, continued it. So it's a multi-headed thing now. And that's why the politicians, the legal system, they back right away from this whole thing because they're part of it. They feed it themselves and they're fed by it. So, you know, we're dealing with a real beast here. It isn't just some weirdos in red robes, right?
And why are the rituals so extreme? Is it to see how far they can get the individual members to go? Is it to compromise people?
All of that. It's Anne-Marie von Bienberg, one of our witnesses, was a lawyer who was invited to a chateau for a banquet. And she shows up and everyone's walking to another room and a lot of them leave and she's left standing there with a kid on an altar, right? And at that point, the door's shut. They film the whole thing. She's compromised, right? They do that consistently. One of the guys they did it with, who's still in power, Mark Rutte, R-U-T-T-E, former premier or prime minister of Holland. Now, he has one of the top spots in NATO. They've elevated him, which you tend to, the more you do this stuff, the higher up you go in the system. You know, I mean, NATO, right? And so, yeah, it's designed to compromise, but you're right, to test, like with anything, you know, you see how far people are willing to go. If you're willing to go the distance and have no morality, you go to the top, right? And so it's that too, but it's also part of it's an addiction. They're addicted to stuff. And when you're into an addiction, you have to do it more and more and more and more until it just sucks you dry and there's nothing left. There's no human being left. There's no soul left. And I believe that's what happens. That's why when you're at these high levels, they wear a mask. Like you see a picture of the popes and they're always smiling and beneficent, but those are doctored photos because people who've met them in person all say the same thing. They have these black, dead eyes like, you know, a shark. I don't know if you've ever seen a shark's eye, but it's just a predator, nothing there but deadliness. And that's what you become when you're part of this, right? Yeah, he could qualify for sure.
He looks really dangerous, Kevin.
Well, yeah, when you read more of these testimonies, you'll see what a monster the guy is. And it was, but his successor, you know, is doing exactly the same stuff as we speak. And that's why we're determined to shut down these things and not simply, you know, research and expose it, right?
All right, folks. So we've got almost 2,000 people watching live across all platforms. Kevin is risking his life talking about these things. So it's very important if we can support his work. All of his links are in the description box. You can get his books, etc. And we're discussing the ninth circle. And Kevin has talked about the origins of it so far and also the purpose of it over the years. And you did touch on something there, you know, about these characters, how they get addicted to the torture and the torment. So would you say you could add to that list of its functions then is the personal gratification these people get from doing these horrific things to people?
Absolutely. That, you know, and having even years ago in my salad days when I was a minister, I did prison ministry, and I've talked to serial killers and serial, you know, bad people, and they get a high off it. They're honest and said, yeah, well, this is just what we do to get our high, and it's like a drug that you need more and more of. And so yeah, there's that whole, it's like anything these wealthy people do. It's always, and you know, it isn't just the church. These things happen in all sorts of communities. I remember when I first started my work in Vancouver, there was a fairly famous media commentator. His name was Jack Webster. He was known all over BC, like in the mainstream media. And when I started investigating this stuff, he called me down and we went out to dinner together, and he said, I've known about the Vancouver Club and what those people do there for many, many years. Everybody knows. It's totally protected. You'll never uncover it. You'll never get these guys before justice, even into a court. He said they pass children around like a good bottle of wine. That's how they view it. They have no conscience. And it isn't just them. It's all their rich friends. They all do it. And you get anywhere close to that and you're dead. You know, and he listed a bunch of reporters and cops who had tried to, right? And so he said, I wish you luck, son. That was kind of his, and he died the next year. But I mean, that's right from somebody right in the system, right? He was a confidant of all those guys. And, you know, so I mean, that's how it operates, right?
So you mentioned people being compromised outside of the Vatican then. And if you look at the leaders of Europe right now, it's an absolute freak show, from Keir Starmer here to Macron, etc. So are you saying then that even though this ritual is in-house at the Vatican, people are brought, outsiders are brought into it, perhaps at the head of politics and in power positions? Is that how it works?
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, Tos, whose picture you saw there, Tos Nienhuis, said one of the first places she was taken as a child was Carnarvon Castle in Wales, where Philip and Charles were present and at these ceremonies. And, you know, an example of the political power of this, when Tos and me and other people in Europe took this to the European Parliament, there was a member of the European Parliament who took this on. He lasted, and he lasted about a month, and then they threw him out, even though he had parliamentary immunity. He went to jail for 6 months. They went after his house and his family, just for raising the fact, it was in relation to that Marc Dutroux case. If you remember Marc Dutroux in Belgium, who was caught with like literal body parts in his house. And in the original court statement he made, the police statement that was then edited out, he made reference to the Dutch royal family members who were with him. And that got edited out and everything. So Laurent Louis, this was the name of the European Parliament member. He got up in the European Parliament and named Mark Rutte as a member of this cult and said, we want to reopen the Marc Dutroux case. Next thing he knows, bang, he's gone. We couldn't find him for a while because he was in prison. There goes parliamentary immunity when you mention the Ninth Circle, right? So this just shows you the network all through the political system, right?
Yeah, let me just add a little bit to that then. Let me just get our friend off the screen there. So Marc Dutroux, we have covered a bit of this before, was a convicted serial R-worder and doing these things to kids as well. Convicted of abduction and R-word of 5 young girls in 1989. Released on parole after just 3 years imprisonment. Arrested again in 1996 on suspicion of having abducted, tortured, and essayed 6 girls between 8 and 19, 4 of whom were unalived. His widely publicized trial ended with his conviction on all charges in 2004, and then he was sentenced to life in prison. Accomplices include his wife, a few other names here. And anyway, there's other news stories saying that he himself has insisted that he was part of a ring. And speaking as his trial drew to a close, he expressed his sincere regret but did not ask forgiveness of the victims' families. Flanked by armed guards and standing behind a bulletproof grass screen, he told the crowded course, "I am not a murderer." And so, is he the fall guy then for this ring?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like whenever you catch one person, they're the scapegoat, and they have to play along, and they're granted things if they do. But here's again, like what I mentioned right at the beginning of the show, you run into the political fact that in the existing system, it's a rigged game. You cannot get justice. You cannot save children in it, you know. And that's why, you know, we emphasize so much the common law courts, setting up sovereign republics like we did in Canada. There's a movement in England to do the same thing. As a matter of fact, when I come in Europe, to Europe in September to help the court, I'm going to be coming to England. I'm even writing a letter to King Charles, inviting him to tea and saying, look, let's talk about how you need to abdicate. You need to step down because the crown is a convicted criminal institution. We need a republic, just like you used to have in England in 1649, right? And should be interesting, right? Should be entertaining. But we got to act from our own jurisdiction, our own power. This is the only way things ever come out.
Okay, so you know we've touched on the origins of it and the purposes of the Ninth Circle. So how did it evolve over the centuries in the church?
Well, that's hard to piece together. Although it'll be easier recently. As I mentioned, we have, and there's more confirmation now that we're going to get this log. It's an actual journal written in Latin, held in the secret archives of the Vatican. Apparently somebody has accessed it and has copies of it, and they're getting it to our prosecutor. This is a record going back to 1870 of all the participants in the Ninth Circle. Now, only in the Vatican. That doesn't cover all of Europe, but at least it's got it apparently has Robert Prevost, Pope Leo's name in it, confirming what the eyewitness said, seeing him at those rituals. And now we're always wary of fabricated stuff that's going to then prove to be wrong, and then it delegitimates us and makes us look like we're making it all up. I mean, this is standard practice they do. So, but we never publish anything unless A, it's confirmed by at least 3 other sources who don't know each other, and also B, a separate archival confirmation, because this stuff exists. And it's like we found in Canada, we had the eyewitness testimonies of, mass murder in these Indian death camps run by the churches. We had documentation confirming the eyewitness testimony, showing the 50% death rate in these places. And we had forensic evidence from digs we had done, like at the Mohawk Church of England school. All confirmed. That's all you need in a court of law to convict, right? And so when people say we're making stuff up, say, okay, let's see the evidence that we're making it up. Let's see your counter evidence. And none of the naysayers ever provide that evidence. They just name call, which is what you do when you don't have evidence. You just attack the witnesses. So we're on fairly solid ground, especially since we've got a bite from people within Interpol who know all about this stuff. I mean, don't forget, Interpol goes back a long ways, and they've come across this stuff all the time. They're not allowed politically to intervene, but they have the evidence, they have the information. And apparently from the prosecutor, they're beginning to access more of this.
So keep your questions coming in for Kevin, folks. You're getting asked, is one of the purposes of the Ninth Circle energy harvesting?
Yeah, we've talked about that. It's a process that I don't understand, but other people do. We have kind of psychic investigators working with us too, people who've taken us right to grave sites, and they say it's multidimensional energy harvesting, right? And Rome is kind of a center of that energetically, but it happens all over the planet depending on where the energy lines are and everything. And yeah, so that'll be part of the evidence too, that discussion.
And the location of these rituals, is it on ley lines, someone asked?
Sometimes, but not always. Like like for example, where Queen Elizabeth and Philip abducted those 10 children, native children at the Kamloops school, and they were never seen again. You trace the latitude of Dead Man's Creek where they vanished, and it goes exactly through the Isle of Wight. And you all know about the Isle of Wight. I mean, it's a kind of a demonic center. So yeah, those, and near just south of Stonehenge as well, and Glastonbury. So I mean, yeah, there are those definite lines, but there's also other places. These Ninth Circle people are just human as well. They have protection, but they screw up sometimes. And there have been occasions like when we broke up that ceremony in Montreal, it was happening beneath Reine de Mont Cathedral in Montreal, Marie Reine de Mont. And yeah, these guys then take off to a place in the country, in the Quebec country. They were later tracked down and found that they'd gone to a safe house where they also tried to do these things. So enough pressure is brought to bear, and these people break, even with all the protection in the world. And so that's why we keep emphasizing now it's time for action. We've got a lot of evidence, a lot of information. Now, how do we stop them? That's the question before the court, right?
So has there been infighting in the Ninth Circle, and does it have like a set leader?
There was a big infighting going on between Ratzinger and Bergoglio. Okay, so Pope, keep forgetting the guy's name. What was Pope Benedict and Pope Francis. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that Pope Benedict Ratzinger stepped down after we brought out this evidence is do you remember I mentioned how the Spanish government had looked at our evidence, wrote to Ratzinger and said, you may face arrest if you come to Spain. Then he resigns, February 2013. One of the people who did that was a guy, he was the Spanish ambassador to the Vatican, Eduardo de Berruga, his name was. He was a close confidant of guess who? Jorge Bergoglio, who then became Pope Francis. So the Francis faction, and I'll talk about that, who they are, they exploited what we were doing in order to ease out, kind of bounce out Ratzinger to allow Francis to look like this wonderful saint who's replaced the bad emperor, right? And yeah, I mean, he even looked like the evil emperor, right? So now you bring in smiley-faced Frank, named after Francis of Assisi, The contrast reassures everybody that, oh, good, the church is back in good hands now, as if the Pope has any power, right? You know, so that's part of the game that's played, and it definitely was a factor in getting Ratzinger out. You know, their enemy of their enemy was their friend, kind of thing. You know, but there you go, Smiley Frank, right? And you'll notice the guy who's in now, Bob Prevost, he's also a smiley guy. You know, you got to keep up the image because more and more of this dirt is coming out. So you got to keep people's head in the bubble that, you know, depending on how one guy smiles determines the health of the church. So anyway, the Francis faction, this guy, was not the old Italian guard. Like Ratzinger was kind of the old European mob. And he's with China, or was with the China faction. As we've talked about, their money is going east. It's why Biden and other US presidents go over and yeah, there he is, another Frank number 2 there. And so it's part of the political shift. The new faction in the church that this guy also represents is the pro-China lobby, and they're going into the BRICS alliance and all that. So it comes down to that money issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, look at the contrast, viewers, in these smiley guys. We've got smiley guy 1, smiley guy 2, versus the dead eyes of these guys. It's a whole different front, isn't it, for PR purposes?
Yeah, and don't forget those pictures you're looking at of the smiley guys are doctored, so you don't see their eyes. You know, and we've even talked to media people those are not his eyes. You know, we've talked to media people in Italy who do this, who are hired not only by the church, but corporations, you know, governments. When you got some real bastard, you've got to make them look good, right? So it's AI technology kind of appealing to what people want to see. You know, some nice guy at the helm, so we'll all be taken care of while they, you know, do all these heinous crimes off at the side, right?
They probably have the same people come in who do, you know, with the female models in the photos, they dilate their eyes, so they look more seductive, etc. But you're saying they do the same thing with the pictures of the popes?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they? It's the richest corporation on the planet. Why wouldn't they be doing it even more for these guys? And because they have even a lot more. They've got 2,000 years of crime to cover up. So they're going to be the prime recipient of these efforts, right? But I know, you know, from personal experience, I've met some of these people. When we did the church occupations, I've looked into the eyes of these priests and archbishops and the church people who got rid of me. Same deadness, same lack of empathy, you know, and it just reminds me how demonic this thing is and how universal it is we're dealing with. The best cover for evil is a church, right?
Of course, yeah. So over the years then, has the Ninth Circle stuck to the same rituals or has it evolved?
It's a good question. It's something I can't answer, but the eyewitnesses will be able to, because some of them have been in, like this German woman, until relatively recently. Like the people you need to get to are the members of the children, like Tus, who were not killed, who were the witnesses. But they are very loath to come forward naturally, because if there aren't other people willing to come forward, and if they're not protected in a major way, where is it going to get them? Like Tos is living in hiding now, and she had to after our interviews, right? There were a number of attacks that happened in that and threats, but they know very well what's going to happen to them if they reveal too much. And so that's kind of an impediment. That's why we need other people in the infrastructure to come forward, like that guy, the Ninth Circle guy, who's given his secret testimony, the government people and others. And you only get that when you threaten their money and their public image, like we did in Canada. So we got to ramp up the action on this. And that way they'll start breaking ranks. If we do all the interviews in the world, that's not going to threaten them. But taking action directly where they live and they do these practices, that's what we're doing. We're forming, actually, part of the work of the court is they're forming special teams of trained people to go in and seize the evidence, make the arrests, do all that, bring them into court. If they're not willing to come, they will physically bring them into court. And we figure, you know, if they want to get their goons and have a punch up and have a confrontation, all the better. We'll film it, embarrass them even more, put the police on the spot saying, why aren't you investigating these things? We've done that in Canada. We confront the RCMP directly. Once we started doing that, suddenly you see in the press all the revelations about residential schools coming out, at least they're spun revelations. And so it always has an effect when you take direct action. And it's fun as well. Let me tell you, it's great seeing them shit themselves when you're showing up in their churches.
So Susan wants to know, are all Catholic bishops part of the ninth circle rituals?
They're not participants necessarily, but they're all supporters of it. They know about it. They cover it up. They go after people who talk about it, and they support it in every way. They have to. It's part of the, like I say, it's part of your vow to support the church institution, and part of the church institution is the ninth circle. So yeah, they all know, even if they I know Catholic priests who've left after, being exposed to this work and everything. And we've talked a lot, as a former minister, I talk to them and they say, yeah, any church is a culture of fear and silence. You're not to talk about this stuff, right? And, if your local clergy person is buggering some kid somewhere, you're not, the church will deal with it, right? I mean, there's the whole policy in the Catholic Church to do that. No one is to tell the cops, it's embedded. That criminal conspiracy to protect these criminals is embedded right in church policy and practice. So of course they're all going to know, and if they talk about it, they're out, like I was, right?
And because people have talked about it, Kevin, has the Vatican took measures to camouflage the ninth circle more, or is it so buried in the heart of the Vatican that they're insulated from ever being detected?
Well, it's known now. It's widely known. As a matter of fact, one of the people in Italy working with us said a lot of Italians know about the ninth circle, but Pope Francis, he was an attempt to bury it. That's the whole reason. And the guy in now, Prevost, they think they can bury it, even though they're personally part of it, like that testimony that he was there at least 2 ninth circle ceremonies that eyewitnesses have seen him at. And so they have that hubris, right? That the Greeks said the inevitable result of being in power is hubris, this arrogance and self-confidence that you're God and nothing can ever touch you. Well, that always works in our favor all the time. And let's hope they keep acting that way, because they shoot themselves in the foot all that time and they don't see us coming. They're overconfident. And, so, I mean, that's part of the climate, right?
So are there any popes that have ever gone against the ninth circle or tried to stop it?
People theorize that John Paul I, who was poisoned after 28 days in office, was going to, but that's just surmising. He never mentioned the ninth circle. He had to be part of it in order to become pope in the first place. He's on, like we talked about, what we've learned from the Vatican logs, there's a red list of accepted candidates like this Prevost on the right, who that very month that he was shaking hands with John Paul II was part of that ninth circle ritual. Okay, so he was on a red list. He could become a future pope. So John Paul I couldn't have got in unless he was part of it. He went after the Vatican Bank and threatened the money. That's why they got rid of him. So I don't see how any pope could go against it, because at that point, you're so programmed, you're so in the club. Why would anyone go against it? Right?
Secret Watcher wants to know whether Cardinal Pell was involved in the ninth circle.
Well, like I said, by definition, they're all involved directly or indirectly by sin of omission or commission or omission. But Pell, like we talked about, was part of the Ratzinger faction. Bergoglio got him out because he was interrupted. See, Bergoglio has been trying to concentrate the finances of the Vatican, and Pell was a traditionalist around the Ratzinger crowd who wanted to, he was kind of monkeying around with the Vatican finances, so they set him up to be denounced as a child trafficker. Right? So, it's all Vatican politics. It's just.
So Jerry wants to know whether you think the members of the ninth circle are demonically possessed.
That's part of it. But the thing to understand is the institution is demonically possessed. Because just try to talk to a loyal Catholic about this stuff and watch the reaction. It's like somebody possessed. It's like, they refuse to believe that their leader can do that, right? That's a state of possession. I mean, and a whole culture that knows these things are going on and don't lift a finger to stop it. That's a state of possession. So, I mean, I wouldn't kind of make that seem like it's some weird separate thing from any of us. We're all part of this problem, right?
Jimmy Savile. Was Jimmy Savile in the Ninth Circle? Because he was knighted by the Pope, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so undoubtedly, I mean, when you talk about somebody's eyes, just take a look at his. But no, you got to assume that, but no specific evidence that he was at ceremonies. I've never seen it, but who knows?
So Barry wants to know, how do the members of the Ninth Circle get sexually turned on with such horrific things happening around them?
Well, just talk to any sadomasochists. People are sexually aroused by all sorts of weird things. I know as a minister, working on the street for many years, I mean, and a lot of the young girls working on as prostitutes, the thing that they can't get sexually excited anymore, but the thing that used to is like if their father had violated them and all this stuff, that's the only way they could get excited, through violence, watching the ripping apart of children or animals. I mean, because don't forget, it's interesting, the part of the human brain responsible for aggression and the so-called elevated spiritual feeling is also responsible for the sex drive. It's in the hypothalamic region of the brain. So in other words, you can kill, you can get a sexual high, and you can believe in God all at once. It's the same part of the brain. That's why the old adage is, if you wanted, it's more likely to be a criminal in these things we've been talking about if you're religious, because religion gives you the moral justification and the high to feel that, this is great what I'm doing, right? Whereas an atheist might be more skeptical that God is on your side when you're doing this to children, right? Or committing just war or whatever. So I think that's, it could be wired into us biologically too, and that's the scary thing, right?
So can anyone that's in the Vatican, like, how do you join? How do you get into the Ninth Circle? Are you selected?
Yeah.
Or can you apply? Like, in the mafia, you become a made man. There's all this ritual around it.
It's all in the family. You got to be brought in and inducted. Usually, you can't just knock on the door and say, "Hi, can I be part of?" No, they blackmail and induct people in to be participants. But the foundation of it is built on these Catholic families, intergenerational over many centuries, and they're the hub of. They bring their children in, like the Trudeaus in Canada. Pierre Trudeau, the father, Jesuit, just like Justin Trudeau, the former prime minister, was Jesuit educated, off to Rome. Giving up the eldest child, like the Trudeau family, the Dutch royal family, they're all sacrificed their children to these things. So, I mean, you got to be born into it. It's like, quote, royalty, right? They see themselves as that. And, but they also have participants who come in and can prove themselves. Right?
William wants to know which of your books describe the Ninth Circle.
Murder by Decree. On Amazon, it has the, kind of the background and more on that. This book, there's two things I wanted to mention too. This is a summary, but it has recent evidence in Canada about how the Ninth Circle operated on the West Coast, how they were responsible for knocking off our people. Like, Harry Nahane, William Coombs, who saw Queen Elizabeth take the kids, Bingo Dawson. There was actually a West Coast common law court case 2 years ago where it looked into what happened to me and these people, how it involved Ninth Circle participants, like the very church people who got rid of me and who arranged, the elimination of our members. They're all in the Ninth Circle chapter on the West Coast of Canada, the 12 Mile Club. And so, yeah, those books and a lot of our former radio shows, if you write to me, angelfire101@protonmail.com. I'll send you the links to our former BBS shows, radio shows that go into this in more detail.
So what would happen if someone was picked to join the Ninth Circle and that person refused?
They'd be threatened. They'd be warned not to ever talk about it. If they did, they'd vanish. Or they would be made a public example of, and their body parts would be found all over the place or something like that, right?
And do you know of any times that actually happened?
Well, I know that it happened to a number of people in the church. Now, I got to remember, there was a predecessor on Vancouver Island who was looking into what I found out in the United Church. and about the 12 Mile Club operating off the United Church mission boats that went up and down the coast to the native villages. And I forget her name. She was found in a grisly condition, all chopped up. And there was usual fog around that. That was back in the 1960s, I believe. I'm going to look up the name for you. But again, like what happened to me and her in different ways, it's meant to be a public example to scare people, right? As people were scared off after they learned these things. So, I mean, yeah, there have been cases, and I'm sure there are more. We just, you mentioning that, I'm actually going to flag that to the prosecutor to help document those cases of what happens to people. Naturally, we don't want to talk about that too much because it'll scare people even more, and that's meant to do that. They do these things in plain sight so that then people back off, right?
So before I ask you this question, I'll just read what the 9 spheres of heaven means. So Dante's Paradiso describes a universe with 10 celestial spheres, including 9 primary spheres of heaven, and the ultimate realm of God. These spheres are the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the fixed stars, and the primum mobile. Dante associates each sphere with a celestial body and the 9 levels of the angelic hierarchy. And then you've got the moon associated with those who made vows but lacked consistency. Mercury linked to those who pursued worldly glory and ambition. Venus, those consumed by earthly love. The sun, those who are wise, knowledgeable, intellectual. Mars, valiant in battle, achieved greatness through strength. Jupiter, wise, righteous, and just. Saturn, virtuous, adhering to the law and tradition. The fixed stars, Dante encounters souls of saints and biblical figures reflecting faith, hope, and love. And the primum mobile, this sphere is the outermost sphere of motion where angels are located and the universe is thought to be driven. And the question for you is, if they believe, and I believe they're referring to the Vatican, in the 9 levels of hell, do they also believe in Dante's 9 spheres of heaven?
Well, don't forget, if they really believed in heaven and hell, and they believe you go to hell for doing sins, do you think they'd be practicing these things? What they say they believe in, it's like people go to church. Oh yeah, I believe in all this stuff, but then look at what they do in a week, during the week. They don't practice it. It's just for Sundays, right? This is the official rationale you need to justify what you're doing. That's their mindset. In truth, there are not hierarchies. I mean, if take Jesus' own words, for example, if he believed in a spiritual hierarchy, would he have said the kingdom of heaven is within you, within all of you? He would have said, no, go to the church and get absolution like the church created after, right? The church creates these hierarchies in people's minds. So you're subordinate and you've got to follow somebody else's lead. It's part of the imprisonment of the human psyche and soul, right? But the reality, as Native people tell us all the time, the few that are left around who are traditionally indigenous, they say, no, there's this oneness in the universe, and we're part of that oneness. And kind of like Jesus's own teachings and many other faith teachings, that say that hierarchy is a human invention, just like fear and all these things. So I don't, in a way, Dante, who knows why Dante wrote that? Maybe it was a propaganda piece from the Vatican, like who knows? But I wouldn't put ultimate stock in it, right? I would use our own common sense, our own love, our own humanity to get at the heart of these things. Right?
So next question from a viewer is it the case, the bigger the sins against God you commit, the higher Satan promotes you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way of describing it. But I mean, I know that when you do something wrong and you know it's wrong, you're diminished. And there's actually, they use that word in the Bible, actually, where they're describing God forgives the sins of the people of Israel, but he's diminished by it. There's a word nepish in Hebrew, which means God's own, this is wild, God's own substance is diminished because of the sins of his people. Okay, so that's very accurate. What happens when we do the wrong thing, we become less, and we become less and less, and we expect everyone around us to become less and less, and that's why they hate people who coexist with this institutionalized evil we're all in. they hate truth tellers. They hate people shining a light on that because they're revealing their own diminishing. And you diminish enough and you're not there anymore. Something else is taking you over. And that's the real evil. That's when we're able to do these horrible things to children and to each other, and to lie about it, and the lie piles on the lie. But we've got to be brave in the face of that and say, no, we are holding on to humanity, and any one of us can do that and should do that, right?
So we're almost an hour in doing a deep dive on the ninth circle, and this is probably one of the most fascinating episodes that we've ever done. I'm certainly fascinated, and I hope you viewers are as well. There's tons of questions coming in. Please keep the questions coming in, folks, but also please support Kevin. His links, his work, his books, all the links are in the description. We've got almost 2,500 watching right now across all of the platforms. So please keep your questions coming in. And Kenneth wants to know, how influential is Opus Dei in Catholic Church circles?
Well, they have been traditionally. I don't know how much they are now, because don't forget, Francis and now this guy, Prevost, are liquidating the finances and the independence of all these different cults within the church. And Opus Dei, the work of God, it means, has traditionally been associated with military dictatorships, arms dealing all over the world. But, it's part of the facelifting the Vatican's doing. China doesn't want the finances interrupted. So the Vatican's got to do anything they need to do to make sure they get the money and they look good. Protect your public image and money. That's their weak links. That's their Achilles heel that you always have to hit at. So I don't know. It's a good question. And I'm going to find that out more when I go to Italy and start snooping around more. But I would say that, no, that it's questionable how independent these groups are anymore and how, if they even exist, right?
So is the ninth circle just one of many competing rituals within the Vatican, or is it of that genre? Is it solely the main one?
It's definitely a primary one. There could be others. Don't forget, do you really ever see the real power brokers? Not really. We can sense them, and there can be rumor about them, and it goes for these cults too. The things that are really at the heart of this stuff, you don't necessarily see it all. We've just gotten this through eyewitnesses and that, but they all do damage control. I mean, I'm sure right now the Ninth Circle are refurbishing everything and getting rid of witnesses, and there'll be some other spin done on it. But so you just got to keep at them relentlessly for that reason, right?
Are the Orthodox bishops involved? You've already answered that, haven't you? You said that they're all privy to it, basically.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If anyone had questions about the court and what's going on and how you can get involved, please, that's what we want to focus on.
Okay. Lord Blackwood wants to know, when did the British Crown become corrupted by these Catholic Satanists? Because the Crown turned against the Vatican years ago. Well,
Henry did declare independence and did kind of a refurbished Catholic Church by saying, the Pope is on the head of the church, I am. That's why Anglican rituals look so Catholic, because they're really variation on the same theme. But don't forget the Holyrood Agreement in 2010 between Ratzinger and Elizabeth Windsor negotiated the terms by which the Church of England would come back into the Church of Rome. And that's a fait accompli. I mean, they retain their appearance of separateness, but in a way, they've always been part of the same beast. And that was formalized in 2010, like I said, in Holyrood, Scotland.
Were the three missing Beaumont siblings in Australia taken by the Ninth Circle?
I don't know about them. I don't know that case.
I don't know about that case either. Did Malachi Martin know, and was it one of the reasons he left the church?
Could be, although I don't think he's ever made direct reference to it, which could be part of the deal. I mean, you work out deals, if you're right in the beast and then you leave, you usually have to sign a confidentiality agreement, sometimes in blood, with the church, that you're never going to talk or you're going to end up in bits and pieces. So who knows?
When is the International Court trial for the Vatican?
It's opening formally on Monday, September 1st of this year. We're using the summer to compile the case. The subpoenas are going to go out to the present Pope Leo, Robert Prevost, that week, along with his accomplices. And then we're going to be making as much of this public as we can, right? So it should be interesting.
Okay, so how do Romanism religionists infiltrate born-again Christian congregation? Do they literally send agents?
Well, they send the money. It's like churches are financial operations, and they don't operate unless they have tax-exempt status with the government. So they're an arm of the state, and they're also an arm of Vatican money. And we've been showing this all over the world through, I mentioned last time, the World Council of Churches, which is funded directly out of Rome. It's the federation of all the Protestant churches who have not accidentally dropped the traditional Protestant statement that the Roman pontiff is the Antichrist, synagogue of Satan, they used to refer to Rome. So they dropped the whole Antichrist thing, and they're all their buddies. It was part of the ecumenism agenda that came in Vatican II in 1962, which said we want to unite all the world religions. Yeah, under them, they've left that part out, under the control of the Vatican. And it was also interesting, it's a little known fact that at that same Vatican II, and not accidentally, that's when the policy of crimen, remember that all priests were supposed to cover up child abuse, that was extended to every Catholic in the world at that same gathering. So again, they're globalizing the crime, getting everybody under the control, and making it mandatory for every Catholic in the world to not report these crimes against children to the police, or they get excommunicated, which means you go to hell for snitching on a criminal priest, right? God doesn't like snitches,
So a few people are asking the significance of the number 9.
I wish I was a numerologist, and I don't know. You got to ask somebody who has the knowledge. I don't want to pretend I have it, but we know that it keeps cropping up all the time. Those 10 children who were taken, I know that the number 10 is a symbol of completion and beginning again. So Tos has said this, that there are often 10 children at a ceremony because you use it to kind of, if you're wanting the energy to begin something new again, that 10 comes in. But you should, I don't know, I'm sure you know people, Sean, who could answer that question better.
Yeah, Beverly Rhodes is in the chat. Well, she was. If you're still out there, Beverly, what is the significance of the number 9 in the 9th circle, please? If you've got any perspective on that, it would be fascinating to hear it. So Izzy wants to know, what can each of us do to help Kevin's efforts?
Well, lots. First of all, contact us. And you got the contact information there. You can start educating people. You can work with the court to do education and even work as an investigator and others in your own community. Because like I say, this stuff is everywhere. Join the campaign to actually take actions against these churches and the places we know these rituals are going on, and sponsor me to come and speak in your community. All of these things. The important thing is to get enough knowledge to know you can then act. Say to your neighbors, stop giving money to the Catholic Church. You're funding these criminals. It's against the law to do that, for one thing. So I'd say write to me and read our sites and books, especially these ones I just pointed out. These recent ones, which I don't think you know about. You can see them all online at murderbydecree.com. This one's called The Criminal Conspiracy to Silence Genocide Truthers in Canada. And this actually is the transcript of the court case we did in Vancouver, showing how the 12 Mile Club and those people arranged the wiping out of our movement. Nine, there we go. 9 of our members in Vancouver ended up dead from, their participation. So those are books to get as well.
So Beverly, thank you. Beverly's responded 9 is the switched up of 6. So you got the 666's 6 number. Yeah. The 9 in the 9th circle provides a reference to the final circle of hell. All right. So next question is, what signs to look for in regards to cult members within your own community?
It's like a police operative. You can't spot them. They're too well camouflaged. Usually look for a religious person. The odds are that if there's these things going on in your community, it's out of a church. And I don't mean by any, the Catholics have been doing it for the longest. They're the experts at it. They run a lot of it, but they're not the only ones. Literally, I mean, I could give you dozens of church names that have been said to me of people who have been harmed, right? So it's the best cover. And so, one way to do it is you provoke the beast. You get one of our leaflets and you go start handing them out of church of your choice about, these crimes against children. And depending on how they react, you're going to see whether they're guilty or not. I remember that was when we first started picketing the churches in downtown Vancouver. There was a native elder. She was watching these church people yelling at us and calling us names and that we're making it all up. And she said, of course they did it. Look at how they're reacting. Because if you didn't do it, you'd say, oh, really? Oh, yeah, I've heard about you, Kevin. But no, but they hate you. They hate you for doing these things. That's the mark of somebody with blood on their hands, right?
Didn't you send me some videos or photos of you guys going into these churches and doing stuff?
Oh, that's online at murderbydecree.com under ITCCS updates, all of our postings. I can send it to people, the link. It's so beautiful. It was the day that we all went in and occupied Holy Rosary Cathedral just before the government broke and started admitting these things because of these church occupations. It was like counting coup on the beast, right? And native people who were terrified to go near the church, we all went in there and we owned the place. And some of the priests even ran out the back, when in the course of us handing out flyers to the church members. It's so beautiful. I can't describe to you the feeling of joy and empowerment among all of these street people who didn't have anything to live for, and they're so miserable, and they came out of there in tears. And that's something to live and die for. I'm telling you, when you bring that kind of life to quote victims, one of the women said, I used to be a victim, now I'm a threat. I'm going to get these bastards. That's so great. So great to be part of that. So I would say to people, why deny yourself that experience? You need to do that. Take these actions, and we're all fed by this when you're striking a blow for the right thing, right?
Viewers, put a 1 in the chat if next time Kevin comes on, you'd like us to show you some of the footage of him in action in these churches and get his commentary. Put a 2 in the chat if you'd rather not. So Ray J wants to know, is the Vatican just another business corporation with the best ever advertising capture of customers?
The short answer is yes. I mean, if it was a religious body, why would it have 80% of the world's bank deposits channeled through it? I mean, it's, now let's see, who said you cannot serve God and money? I think that was Jesus, wasn't it? But they figure you can serve both, right? And so what does that tell you? That's the demonic lie right there. That's why my Protestant ancestors always called it this, and the Antichrist. It's opposite the Spirit of Christ. And so anyway, yeah, it is.
Ray J sent a follow-up question. Thanks, Ray J. What happens with Christianity if the Vatican falls?
Well, the Vatican has nothing to do with Christianity. So when it falls, it'll be a real boost for the real Spirit of Christ. And those people who are trying to live that kind of simple existence based on his teachings and none of this paraphernalia of ritual and crime hidden behind robes, right?
Ryan wants to know, where does the Vatican and Catholicism invest its donational proceeds? Well, some of it goes to lawyers who protect these guys who are harming kids. It's disgusting.
There are corporate investments in the arms industry, in online porn companies, and big pharma, laundering money for the mob. We found that not even 5% of the church's income goes to charity. Right there, they should lose their tax-exempt status, because in every country, you only get tax-exempt status as a church if you put all of your income towards religious education or charitable works. Well, the Catholic Church has only a small percentage that they do. So how come they still have tax-exempt status? They're just flaunting the law, breaking the law, and governments go along with it. So, I mean, that's by their works you will know them. Jesus also said that.
How has Roman Catholicism played a part in globalism and open borders? What is their end goal?
Okay, so it's the original corporation. It's had the corporatist agenda all along, especially in the last 100 years. Don't forget, the Vatican was set up by Mussolini. And this corporatist, some people call it fascism. It's kind of like super totalitarian state where big money and the state get together like that. And it's like what you're seeing in the world today, everywhere. Like what happened with COVID, and big pharma calling the shots. The corporatocracy, that corporatist model was set up by the Vatican. As a matter of fact, after Mussolini got in, Pope Pius XII, not so pious, the 12th, who recognized Hitler's regime, said, fascism is the social doctrine of the church-made government. So that's what he's saying. The whole corporate system today is derived from Rome. That's why their money is going into the other big corporatist power, China. One guy at the top, the emperor system, the pope system, it's all that same hierarchy. And globalism is part of that. Pope Francis Bergoglio used to say all the time, he believed in the one world religion, the one world order. Everybody needs to line up and get their shots. You know, this is the progressive liberal pope speaking, right? You know, so yeah, they are at the heart of the New World Order. I mean, you could say it was their creation.
Okay, next question is, how can we get access to the Vatican secret library? Is it possible? Suspicion that much of the truth is hidden in there.
We've had access to it. We've had people who've seen the stuff. We got that. The only reason the world knows about this policy of Crimin, it was leaked to the London Observer in the year 2007 by a source who also connected with giving us the policy of these other policies we've been talking about, the log of the Ninth Circle and all that. That's all coming out of the Vatican Secret Library. And no doubt they've gone in there long ago and cleaned out a lot of the incriminating stuff because they don't know. They don't know how far this is going to go. We kept Ratzinger under house arrest until he died. You know, he didn't leave the Vatican because he knew he could be arrested. That's a sign of how afraid they are. So yeah, I mean, even if we got in there, who knows what might be left. But the point is, we don't have to have solid proof that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't pull the trigger to know that somebody beyond Oswald killed JFK, right?
It looks like they didn't doctor Pope Pius's eyes. That perhaps that was before the eye doctoring began. Put a 1 in the chat, folks, if you think he's got dead eyes. Pope Pius. Put a 2 in the chat if you think he's got friendly, smiley eyes. We'll see where that goes. I've got a question for you. Where is it? There it is. So, is there any connection between the level of cover-up underway and the pending court date, as tabloids and MSM are not carrying info on the case yet? Thank you. Blessings, Bev.
Well, the cover-ups can only intensify. And, you know, don't forget that we're not relying on the mainstream or any of the places that are affected by a cover-up. We have our own sources, like I've been sharing to some degree, and people who haven't come forward. We have our own body of evidence. We have our own experience to go on. So in a way, the cover-up doesn't matter, because if anything, they shoot themselves in the foot even more by blatantly covering up stuff, right? I mean, you know, we saw this. I'll give you an example of that. In Canada, when the government had to respond, when we did all these church occupations, they set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was run by the perpetrators themselves, and you weren't allowed to give any evidence, or they could lead to a court case or any of that. And they burned all their documents and everything. They kept changing their story every 5 minutes. First they said, yeah, half the children died. Then they said, no, only 3% of them died. Every week you'd hear a different version coming out of the TRC. And that wasn't accidental. It was to so confuse everyone that you don't know what to believe. You know, people experience that on the internet. There's information overload. You don't know what to believe anymore, right? And that's a conscious psyop they do. So we just stick to the hard facts and the evidence, you know, the document showing half the children are dead after 1 year, you know, irrefutable, that kind of thing, right?
If Elizabeth II didn't sign the agreement with the Vatican until 2010, what's the theory about the alleged involvement with the Canadian native children back in the 1950s?
Well, the Crown sponsored these death camps they call residential schools. The Crown legitimated, legalized, and sponsored these places along with the churches, Catholic, Anglican, United Church. So they were co-conspirators, co-partners in the crime. That's why she's involved in these stuff personally. And that was the finding of the court when it found her guilty in 2013, that it was a joint church-state operation from the beginning, right?
Okay, so Ray J again, is the Vatican the head of mafia operations?
Good question. I would imagine so. But it's, again, tag team, right? I mean, like that Furio Colombo, the Democratic senator in Rome, who talked to me when the month I did the exorcism in October 2009, he said, the mafia, the government, the church, they're all the same people. And they all just care about their assets. That's their only concern. So, I mean, you're talking about the same gang of thieves, you know?
Isn't a lot of money laundered, mafia money laundered through the church, imagine?
Jonathan Levy, he was a Washington, D.C. lawyer who went after them until the government shut him down. He estimated that in a 10-year period, this is during the 80s to the 90s, in a 10-year period alone, the Vatican Bank laundered almost $15 billion in mafia money from just the U.S., okay? So it's a huge operation, this money laundering. And where the present Pope is from Chicago, that's the heart of the Vatican mob in America. The Archdiocese in Chicago, Cardinal Cody, Archbishop Bonkinkas, all these mob figures become church people, and then they just do the money laundering inside for them. And interestingly, I think I mentioned this, Obama's first job, Barack Obama's first job was working for, guess who? As a social worker with the Archdiocese of the Catholic Church in Chicago, which is probably why he shut down the Attorney General when they were trying to third party the Pope to come in these child abuse trials in America. The Attorney General just prevented any of that. Now, of course, Republicans do the same thing. They all protect the Vatican, but that's another blatant example of that mob tie, right?
Yeah, Obama's just a classic member of the club. What a absolute scam he pulled on the public. All right, so Anna, is the United Nations connected to the Vatican to promote a worldwide religion?
That's right. That's why it very much is. And in fact, my voice fell out here. That's what we document in this book, which so many of you have thankfully bought. Get on Amazon. It shows how the Vatican basically force their way into the UN. They're not a nation under international law. They're not a government. They don't qualify in any of the ways that allow a UN state to be created, but they were invited themselves in, and they sit on all these UN committees, even though they're a convicted criminal body. They block human rights conventions. You know, and that's why we directed this at members of the UN to say they've got to get out. So they're, again, part and parcel with the whole, you know, these NGOs and the UN and all these corporatist institutions.
So someone just asked about the Orthodox Church, and is the Russian Church, is it immune to the influences? No. There was the same.
When I was in Croatia, I gave talks there, and that's where we found out about the Jasenovac concentration camp, where more people died. It was the third biggest camp in Europe. And Pius XII, that pleasant guy whose picture you saw, authorized this camp to kill Serbs, Orthodox people, because they weren't Catholics. About 800,000 of them were killed by this Archbishop Ivan Saric, a Franciscan. After that, when I was over there, I got approached by a Serb who said he had been documenting similar crimes within the Orthodox Church. And you know, I mean, the best way to keep somebody a devout believer, is to terrorize them and know that children could be taken. No, when you go through these things at a young age, you never question authority. You don't even in your own mind imagine that this guy could be part of a murderous ring, right? You know, so I mean, that's the purpose of why child abuse is not a crime under the law. You know, like I said before, 6 months is all you get in Canada for raping a child, right? It's mandatory for violating a child. It's not a crime. You know,
that's disgusting. And is it because it's so far removed from what people would believe that these people are capable of that enables them to get away with it?
Yeah, that's part of the defenses they have, that people just don't want to believe it, so it becomes not true. But even if people were against it, what's the first reaction of somebody? I hear this every day from people. Well, what can I do? I'm just one person. You don't realize what power you have as one person. If you're a Catholic and you write, we have these forms where Catholics sign it and put in the collection plate and say, I'm not donating to this church while you have this policy of crimen that protects, child abusers. One person doing that creates shockwaves. Boom. Our money's being affected. You have tremendous power, but what's holding you back is your fear and your lack of confidence in yourself. Because since it's like an unused muscle, when have we ever been able to practice courage and self-reliance in our life? We're raised in dependency from day one. So that's part of the big struggle, is looking in the mirror and saying, I have to do this for the sake of children, right? And our future.
Question from Izzy. Is all this depravity coming from a place of greed or fear, or what do you think, Kevin?
Well, the depravity itself, I think people are capable of almost anything if they're raised a certain way and if they're influenced. It's like that classic study that was done of concentration camp guards after World War II and officers within the SS and that. The psychiatrist, amazingly enough, found that less than 1% were actual psychotics. The rest were normal people, but they're put in an evil situation and an evil hierarchy where you have to defer in the chain of command, and you're capable of doing anything. So once you're brought into these institutions, and I said when at these protests at the church and these sit-ins and that we did, when some of our people were physically assaulted by churchgoers who looked very nice, they had children, then they start slugging our native friends. I said, look, it's a religion based on violence. There's Jesus pinned to the cross, and you're going to burn in hell. And there's this simmering guilt and anger about that they can focus and express on anybody who they see as their enemy. And so they're almost pre-adapted to be, just warriors in any cause they want to be directed in. So I think that's endemic in the religious culture, right?
Sorry, I was muted. All of Kevin's links are in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. So just click on the description box to get his links. You got a few people, Kevin, asking about Islam, extreme Islam, and their relationship, with the Catholic Church.
I don't know enough of that to say. I mean, I've heard different things. But don't forget, just war is an idea shared by Christians, Catholics, Jews, and Muslims. It comes out of the same part of the Near East that believe in that violent, dominating God. Domine in Latin, dominator, conqueror. God is a conqueror. Our ancestors had an earlier faith in God as mother, the great goddess of the earth, like my Irish ancestors, in Scotland. And we need to get back to that gentle creation-based understanding of divinity,
Can you speak about the rights of the child? That's from Kat.
Yeah, there are none. In practice, there are none. Okay, so the UN has a nice little convention on the rights of the child, just like they have a convention on genocide that's only been enacted twice in 75 years. And under law, you're not supposed to do all sorts of things to children, and there can be penalties. In practice, it's rarely, if ever, enforced, especially if it's happening in a government that hasn't signed the convention. You can't go after a government for genocide unless they agree to be taken to court. So, you go to the serial killer. Do you want to go to court? No. Okay, well, we can't convict you then. I mean, since when is the law supposed to operate like that? But at that level of international law, it's a big game. It's just words, a word game. And in practice, it's a way to soothe people, to make them think there's justice possible at that level. And there isn't, unless we create the justice, right? We create the justice, folks.
What is Kevin's view on the Orange Order?
Well, my ancestors were part of that, so maybe I'm biased. The Orange Order in Ireland, this was like militant Protestantism. And they're still at war with my other relatives, on my mom's side, Catholic relatives. And it was part of the thing contrived. The whole thing in Ireland or anywhere, it's not about religion. Religion is just a cover. It's really about keeping people divided. And Britain was very good at that as an empire. They did it all over the world. They're still doing it among Native people in Canada. Set the Irish at each other's throats over whether or not Jesus is in the communion wafer or not, literally, or whether it's just a symbol. So the Orange Order in Canada, that's why there aren't a lot of Irish Catholics in Canada. They all got channeled down to the States when they came over on the coffin ships, like my great-grandfather did, Daniel O'Neill from Ireland. His whole family was dead on the ship when they arrived in Montreal. But as a Catholic, he had to become an Anglican or he'd get shipped down south, where they had all the cheap Irish laborers working on the Erie Canal and the railways and dying en masse. So yeah, the Orange Order had a lot of influence in Canada, and I think it still does. There's an Orange Lodge right downtown near the Vancouver Club. And so these old cults kind of overlap, but yeah.
JC wants to know, how do I view the actual court documents on the International Court's website?
Well, the old court case from about Ratzinger, some of it is still up. Our site got destroyed, not surprisingly, soon after the case came out. This is the trouble with trusting people, because the very people who we were trusting to build the site, in fact, were operatives who destroyed the whole thing. We had to reconstruct it. Go to murderbydecree.com under ITCCS archives, videos, and and ITCCS updates, old enough ones. You'll see those records, basic records. We don't have court records yet about this case against the present guy in Rome, because it hasn't happened yet. But we intend to post as much of it publicly as possible and do a more secure job this time. Get it out to many sites. We were learning the ropes at that point. You live and learn. Your best teacher is your last mistake, as they say, right? So,
Ray J, has anyone tried to expose this pre-early 20th century? Are there any records?
Good question. That's a big issue I can't really answer right now, but I know a lot of the church reform movements, like the Reformation and all that, and other groups that split away from the churches, we're always talking about these crimes, the satanic nature of the Church of Rome and that. So it's out there. It's just like with the evidence about the residential school crimes, we had to dig around. We had to go to families. You can't rely on the official archives. And let me just put in a little thing about that. In our work, we found something the British Colonial Office brought in right after World War II. It's called the Legacy Files. Now, look this up in the Guardian newspaper around 2013. They ran a series of articles on this. After World War II, they went through all the colonial records, and any reporting of a crime by Crown officials, whether it's Indian schools in Canada, friendly fire in World War II, like killed my uncle, any of the stuff, like the crimes in Africa against the Mau Mau or the colonial wars, that was not only swabbed out, but a replacement file was put in its place with a false history. So you can't rely on official records ever, like in the Vatican, because they've all been not only swabbed, but actually replaced with a false history, a false narrative, like what you're getting in Canada now about genocide in Canada. So I've seen this happen over 30 years. I've seen how it happens. All of our stuff swabbed off and replaced with this false narrative about, well, we don't know if there were mass graves. Oh, I think only about 3,000 children died. That's the British legacy file system. So this was at the highest level of the Vatican and the British Empire that this replacement history came about. So you got to rely on your own context and your own stuff you dig up on the ground, right?
Michelle, is it mainly men involved in the ninth circle, or women too?
Most, from all the records and the evidence I've seen and the testimonies I've listened to, it's primarily men. Women are involved, like for example, the nuns at this monastery, which we'll mention in Germany. I don't want to give the name yet, but I can say the religious order. It was a group of nuns called, hold on, the Missionary Sisters, Servants of the Holy Spirit, SSP. And these nuns were taking blood from children, locking children in cages. They were the support group for the Ninth Circle ceremonies. So yeah, definitely women in the church and nuns play a big role in this, but also female participants. Some of the Dutch royal family members and the others, there have been women reported at these things.
Oh, I found these women. Let's, I've got a picture of them here, I think. Let's see.
And And don't forget, Anne-Marie van Blienburg took part, as did Toos and others. Part of your expectation as a victim is also to kill children. So, I mean, you know, these crimes are just required of everybody, male or female.
That's the order of those women presently. I'm not alleging they're involved, but that's the picture that's available.
Yep.
All right, so here's the next question. Oh, it's about the tunnels that you referenced earlier. Dawn wants to know, have any of the tunnels ever been investigated?
Yep, we've been in tunnel. I've been in one myself. They're beneath.
How did you get in one of them?
Oh, as part of our cleanup operation we shut it. I wasn't there in Montreal when they shut down the ceremony, but we arrived late and this was talked about years ago on our site. They had just left the place, and this was in the Netherlands at one of the places Toos had pointed out. We went in, there was a ceremony that had within the day, there was stuff literally still warm. They cleaned it up, there was still blood around. And so it was part of a extensive tunnel system under this chateau, which I don't want to mention because it's also involved in the present investigation. But no, I mean, you know, often any big city has these places. Just talk to city workers, talk to the sewer workers or others, and they can tell you.
Ray J wants to know if you've had any new threats targeted at you.
I haven't had someone come to my face and say what happened. Nothing else has happened. And my friend Yosef, who's one of my bodyguards, said, well, Kev, he has kind of gallows humor. He said, maybe this is the silence before the storm, right? And so I'm doing okay still, folks, day by day. You know, you go moment by moment in this work, right?
Do you want to remind the viewers what the last threat was to you?
Oh, yeah. I had just done a committal service at a cemetery in Canada. And Yosef had gone off to the washroom, and black limousine pulls up. Two guys get out. One stands by the limousine. The other walks over, says to me, if you carry on in this case, we're going to do to you what we do to those children. Turned around and left quick. And I called out to him, don't I know you from somewhere? Because sure enough, he had been one of the Knights of Columbus goons who had shut down one of our protests at Toronto Catholic Church, St. Michael's Cathedral in downtown Toronto. So he was, he had older, this happened in 2008, my first encounter with him, but same guys, Catholic goon squad. I mean, you know, these goon squads have beaten up our people. You know, they're just thugs, and they'll do anything. So yeah, I didn't take it lightly.
So Denise wants to know, why are the elites so driven to get rid of the indigenous peoples of this planet?
All of our indigenous people, my ancestors, got targeted in the same way because they're tied to the earth, gives them a power that this satanic force wants to harvest. I mean, you could say the whole corporate system today, the corporatocracy, is harvesting the energy of the earth. Our lives as people, the earth, and not just through strip mining and that, but just literally sucking the energy of Mother Earth. And indigenous people are in touch with that. And as a matter of fact, when I've done sweat lodges with some of my relatives and others, and natives on the West Coast, they say the reason all the trees are cut down is the trees to them represented the tie with the other level. Well, you described it as levels of heaven, but levels of reality. The tree was a communicator from those realms to the people. That's why they venerated trees. They never cut them down except occasionally. But also, when we did our investigation, some of these native elders went and talked to the trees. They said, the roots tell us where these children are buried, right? So the people who were first targeted in these death camps were people like William Coombs, Harriet Nahani. They were the sacred lineage, the spirit dancers who have this understanding. They were the first to be targeted and wiped out, just like the elders, by this empire that spread all over the planet. And so I think in general terms, that's why, but they're great cash cows like they still are. Native people were used and part of the whole genocidal agenda. You just wipe out anyone. They treated Native people in the Americas just like they treated religious dissidents or heretics, like my Huguenot ancestors in France. They were treated the same way. They either convert or they die. As a matter of fact, Archbishop Duryea, he was the Jesuit who set up the model for the residential schools in Canada. He said, he had an infamous quote, convert a third, kill a third, deport a third. That was the Vatican solution. And Guess how many people died in Ireland during the so-called potato famine? A third, and a third deported, immigrated to America. So it's the same formula all over, and it's aimed at our indigenous roots that we still carry. At a cellular level, we do.
I read an excellent book called The History of the Irish Race, which detailed the potato famine, and it was really eye-opening. All right, so Deborah wants to know, Kevin, for those who do not know, how many churches have been destroyed in Canada?
Do you mean burned? Like burned recently? Our count is, I think the latest count was somewhere around 28 in the last few years. It's even higher in other countries. Chile, they've torched a lot of the Mapuche Indians there. Just before Bergoglio showed up, they were torching Catholic churches because, A, they were stealing their land, and a lot of the deeds were in the church, and they were also moving their kids around and grabbing them and using them right out of the church. So it's a defense measure by Native people. You see it happening in Canada, mostly on distant reservations, where they go into the Catholic Church. They either tell the priest to get out and take it over, or if he won't get out, they just burn the church. And like I say, it's how they've always defended themselves, those kind of actions.
I just got to make it clear for legal reasons, we're not advocating any violence or burning of churches. All right, so Dawn wants to know, is every faith involved in this?
I can't speak for every faith, but I just know the major religions all have been named as having practices remarkably similar to the Ninth Circle, including the Mormons who we talked about last time, right? Mirror image, right?
All right, let me go to the next question. I'll answer this one. Jade, is this all connected to Bohemian Grove? We just interviewed ex-Satanist Zachary King a few days ago, who went to Bohemian Grove, and he's exposing that. I would refer you to watch that podcast, Jade. Do you have anything to add on Bohemian Grove, Kevin, or is that out of your remit?
No. I mean, that hasn't been my primary focus, but I'll let others comment on that.
Caesar wants to know, have you had many spiritual attacks by demon spirits, being a great adversary to the demonic?
Personally? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like in 2021, when when I was poisoned in the summer in Ontario, there was an accompanying psychic attack, energetic attack. And it's happened a number of times right after I was fired. I got protection early on, fortunately, or probably wouldn't still be here. But the thing that those attacks do is they give you an insight. You have contact with the thing, right? And each time that's happened, I've become more aware of it, right? More aware of its presence and how it operates. You can almost see it. Well, I do see it in dreams, what it looks like. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was just speaking for myself, but.
Lindsay wants to know, with the court case, will it be on TV worldwide?
It'll be on our media. Naturally, it won't be covered on TV. I'll be surprised if we're even able to get broadcast anywhere, considering the level of sabotage and how much they don't want this stuff coming out. So it might have to be something like filmed and then broadcast later. I don't know yet. I don't handle the technical end of that, or security end, but yeah, hopefully.
What are your thoughts on reports of uncorrupted bodies of so-called saints and other religious?
Well, I don't believe in saints. I mean, the word saint, don't forget, Vatican is energy reversal. So when they say God, they mean Satan. When they say saint, they mean somebody who's demonic. Anyone who's called a saint in the Church of Rome is somebody who served the interests of not only the Vatican, but the Ninth Circle. And here's a beautiful example. Pope Francis Jorge Bergoglio comes to America in 2017 and praises and beatifies, makes a saint, Junipero Serra, who worked to death hundreds of thousands of California Indians. Okay, so that's a saintly thing. We're inspired by his zeal, Bergoglio said. Okay, so that's what a saint is. So I don't go by any of that nomenclature. Uncorrupted bodies, I mean, it's the same BS you get it's the myth, right? Pump into people's heads that this is some kind of divine institution, as if you can have such a thing, right?
On the subject of saints, what does Kevin think of the up and coming, the 16-year-old boy picked for sainthood?
Personally,
is it a PR thing?
My personal opinion. Of course it's PR. I mean, you know, if you talk about saying to somebody who's good and doing God's will, I meet those people all the time, you know, really good souled people. And they're not elevated. They don't have to be elevated. Like my native relatives would always say, you can never spot the real leader because he's invisible. He's always serving the people. He's always out there. He's always the poorest. You never see him or hear him. The ones you see are the people achieving exactly the opposite purpose. That's kind of my view of that whole issue, right?
Caesar wants to know why and when did Protestant preachers start bowing down to Rome, for instance, Billy Graham?
It started in a big way, like I said, at Vatican II, the ecumenical thrust in 1962. But, you know, there's a famous thing too in the JF. Remember when John Kennedy was running for the Democratic nomination in 1960, and he didn't have any standing in any of the Protestant states like West Virginia and that. The Catholic Archbishop went to all of the Protestant ministers, these are often Black Baptist churches, and paid them a few $1,000 each to endorse JFK, the Catholic, for president. That kind of thing goes on constantly with all the churches, right? And those direct payoffs, the integration now of the World Council of Churches with the Vatican, you know, it's just money, and it's been going on a long time, I'm sure, not just since 1962, but that was when it really heated up.
Secret Watcher, are all English monarchs expected to become a ninth circle? And what about their wives? Are they involved, or would they know?
The connection goes back a long way with the monarchy, all the monarchies of Europe. Like we said, we saw Charles and Philip and these others at these events. So yeah, they're integrated, just like Elizabeth agreed to in Hollywood in 2010. They're integrated now. Different masks, same practice. So, and yeah, they take part, you know, these people always bring their relatives, and it's part of the way to blackmail them too. You bring them along, then they're in, they won't talk, right?
Is there any relevance to the flip from German Ratzinger as Pope to present American Leo?
Well, I've talked a lot about that, but don't forget, Leo isn't really an American. He was born there. He's got dual citizenship, Peruvian and American, and he's done all of his work in Peru. So they say American, just, it's politics now. You know, it's about Trump and, you know, trying to use that as a lever to influence the Vatican bank, like, or maybe he's with China, who knows? Like, it's all a guess game at that level of power. But yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell.
Have you seen any signs from Jesus that he is pleased with your path and sacrifices?
Not personally. He hasn't appeared to me or anything like that. Not even in a dream. Not even in a dream, which is kind of disappointing. Although I'll tell you something. I never viewed him as my savior and Lord. I viewed him as a brother. Okay, I've always felt like a spiritual brother with him. And I see him all the time. And all these people who have the courage to come with us and confront people with nothing, people like Bingo and Harriet and William, who, you know, all those people who fell in the fight. I see him embodied in them, and I don't think we should look for him too far away. You know, we should look for him in our neighbors. That's where he said, you know, to find us he said to find me in the, you know, in Matthew 25, that which you do for the least of my people, you do for me. I'm there. That's the only place he ever in the Bible said he was going to be, you know, besides heaven. He said, in the poorest, in the most struggling, that's where you'll find me. So that's where you should go seek him, I think.
Steve wants to know, why are the general public, and specifically Christians, so indifferent about the crimes and pure evil of the Vatican, even when information is blatant and published? And this shocks me, Steve, because it's, you know, it's got one of the biggest PDF file rings in the world, and yet how the public accept them, knowing that, is just beyond me.
I don't think they are indifferent. I mean, lots of people all the time are not indifferent. They like to create the impression that people are apathetic, because that just gets everyone demoralized and you won't do anything. I walked into Pro Cathedral in Dublin, heart of the Catholic world, 23 people on a Sunday morning where there's 500 seating. I see that in papist churches all over the world, right? So people are voting with their feet, but they got the money to make themselves look like anything. They can convince you that they've got billions of loyal followers, right? And you'll believe it. The problem isn't that. It isn't indifference. It's the feeling of isolation, that you're all on your own, you can't do anything, and you're not used to acting. When in your life have you ever had to confront evil to its face? This is a new thing for people, and that's why we're showing you how to do it. We're leading the way. We're leading by example. Now it's time to get on board with us and not just watch this, right?
Oh, here's a nice comment for you from Beryl. I have recently read Kevin's books, links in the description box, folks. The Murder of Children in Canada and the book about the Catholic Church corruption. Recommended reading. It is shocking. Nice one, Beryl.
That's a recent one.
Do you think Princess Diana was aware of the Ninth Circle?
Oh yeah, everyone at that level knows. You know, I would be very surprised if she wasn't.
Has Kevin had any contact collaboration with Cardinal Vigano? Is it?
No, I did get not from him, but right after I did the exorcism, this was interesting in Rome. I got a confidential message from the Cardinal of Genoa, and I'm trying to remember who the guy was at the time, but he wanted to talk to me. And after that, he went silent because, you know, there is a faction, like I mentioned, how Bergoglio levered out Ratzinger through the Spanish ambassador. They want to use our stuff all the time to get at their opponents within the church. So yeah, you can play groups up, like, you know how they always divide and conquer us. We can do the same with them. Well, divide, maybe not conquer at this point, but so no, I haven't had contact with that. And I'm kind of wary about people who talk about reforming the church, because when you're part of it, when you're a cardinal, you know it, you've had to approve to this stuff or you wouldn't still be a cardinal. You know, you don't survive by challenging the church, and you're a member already. Like I said, you're on the red list, you're approved, you're in.
Janka's wondering about Scandinavian monarchs' involvement in the Ninth Circle.
Unfortunately, no, but one of the places I'm going in Europe is Sweden. And because we're working with the Sami indigenous people in setting up their courts for the same genocidal practices on them that we've documented in Canada and elsewhere. We're also working with the common law court system in Sweden to bring some cases. So if you live in Sweden, be sure to contact me and I'll connect you with those folks.
Andrew wants to know whether you've been to France, the Paris Sacré-Cœur bars on the outside of the nuns' quarters, strange, on third and second floor, not ground level, bad vibe.
Yeah, well, I mean, these churches have long histories of these criminal practices, so of course there are going to be bars in the window, right? No, I always got a weird. Somebody said to me once, okay, you know the Templars. This is like a little side note. It's kind of amusing. The Templars, the Grand Master of the Templars was a guy called Jacques de Molay, and when the Vatican and the French king wanted to get the Templars' money, they wiped them all out in one night, and they took the Grand Master. And you know the upside down image in the tarot cards? This is where they get that image of the hanging man upside down. They hung Jacques de Molay upside down outside Notre Dame and burned him alive with the other Templar leaders. Somebody said to me, Kev, I've had a dream that you're the reincarnation of Jacques de Molay. And I said, uh-oh. That mean I'm going to get barbecued one day? And he said, no, go to Notre Dame and see what you think. So I went to Notre Dame. This has happened before I even went to Paris. When I'm there, I thought, okay, let's wander over. And I did get a really creepy vibe, I'm telling you. My hair was standing up on my back when I was standing outside Notre Dame. And maybe it's because of the stuff I've read in that, but it seemed like something else. It seemed like something reaching out. Maybe it was my Huguenot ancestors from France who got, wiped out. But I don't know. Yeah, that's me. That's me outside the oldest Catholic church in Europe, outside Italy. And I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's in Utrecht, Holland. It's somewhere in Holland. And we posted the eviction notice outside, like on the order against the Catholic Church to vacate, that we posted all over the world. Toast was with me that day as well. Yeah. That's kind of remind me that I'm coming to Europe, Canada, and then the US, and then over to Europe in the fall. And please book me in to wherever you can and be in touch with us, and we'll carry this on. The best kind of contact is face-to-face in your community. I don't know if you, good. That's one of these places where the Ninth Circle operates in Canada. The Nanaimo Indian Hospital, just down the road from where I used to live, and where a lot of the stuff came out. They would bring native kids in here for experimental purposes, organ removal. We've had a lot of grisly stuff described. There's sterilization procedures began there, and the rituals where a lot of kids were used.
Kat wants to know, can viewers go with you on these excursions?
In order to accompany us, there has to be a vetting process. We have to know who you are. There's a training process. You can't just kind of wander in with a camera and say, hey, cool. You know, you got to be trained to do this stuff. And so we view it as there's different circles. I mean, the outer circle, education, support, more of an inner circle training, and then the people who actually do it. These are professionals, the ones we rely on. These are like, I don't want to say Joseph, my bodyguard here. I don't want to say what former military he's in, but he is, and he's trained in everything. And you need people like that to do these things. It's not just kind of a lark. It's serious stuff. You've got to be able to defend yourself.
Has the Vatican been hiding our true history?
That's its purpose.
Why are they so good at covering this stuff up?
They've got the money, they've got the power, they've got our incredulity, or is it credulity? I always confuse those words. Anyway, desire not to believe. But that's, like I say, that's disintegrating. I see it coming apart. So take hope.
All right, we are almost at 2 hours, folks. We've answered nearly all of your questions. There are a load of questions unanswered because they were answered in previous episodes, and we don't like to ask Kevin the same question. So go over the previous episodes. I think we're about this must be episode number 6 by now.
Six.
And then there's a lot more information in Kevin's books as well. So his links are down there. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion, Kevin?
Well, just contact me. And don't forget what I said at the beginning of the show. We operate out of our own sovereign jurisdiction. So we go into an area like Canada, we're under the sovereign jurisdiction of the Republic of Canada. That always keeps the cops away. They always honor that. We're doing the same thing in England. The Republic movement in England is actually taken off. We're going to have some meetings about it when I'm there. We've got people all over the Midlands and the South and Scotland who are working on this together. So we're going to say, okay, and like I say, I have invited and will be inviting Charles Windsor to a public debate about why he needs to step down and why he's a convicted criminal, and we'll show him all the evidence. And we're not after him personally. This is not threatening him. It's the institution. I'm sure he's kind of a victim in his own way, but, you know, raised in this stuff. But the institution is the problem. It needs to come down and reestablish the republic the English people once had in 1649. And then they made it a crime of treason to reestablish the monarchy. So it's a de facto, not a de jure power, and we're taking back the power because we need to stop these crimes. That's the point, right?
Can you invite Keir Starmer as well to something like this? Because he's the most despised prime minister in the history of prime ministers right now.
I'll copy him. How's that? We'll have everybody there. Why not? You know, hold it in
So
downtown
Kevin has boldly provided his email address. It is on the screen. It's also hidden from history1@gmail.com. If you guys want to communicate with him directly.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, literally, you get involved with this, we'll save children's lives. Because if we don't do it, if we don't take this action, we're complicit by not acting. So please keep that in your mind and heart.
All right, Kevin, I'm going to let you go on and have a good day, and I shall close the show. Thank you, my friend.
See y'all later. Thank you,
Take care,
Sean.
brother. Cheers. Bye-bye. All right, what a phenomenal show, folks. Please don't forget to support Kevin through his links, and everybody who's been getting the book seems to have really enjoyed it. Email is on the screen. If you missed part 1 with the ex-Satanist Zachary King that we did a few days ago, check it out. It ties into this stuff. Bohemian Grove, the Illuminati. And Zachary is coming back this week. I've just had an email from him today. We are just ironing out the final details. And what else have we got? Ron's at arrest, and he's going to be coming back with a vengeance on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have got still Epstein's niece, Anya Wick. I've been speaking to Anya. She's been having a rest as well, but should be coming in strong soon. We have got our MK Ultra survivor, Annalie Cummings, on June 16th. And I am going to endeavor to go through all my emails and get some new guests coming on in the next couple of days and getting more coverage of this, World War III possibility escalation, Russia, Ukraine, which is a story I'm absolutely fascinated with because it really affects us all. But thank you for your questions, folks. Many of your questions were answered previously, and Kevin has also asked me to not ask him any questions that do not relate to what he's talking about. So some questions were a bit removed from what he was talking about. So we didn't want to put him under that burden. All right, but thank you for all your questions. You've really helped steer the conversation this evening. It's been absolutely fascinating. Knife Circle, one of my favorite subjects. This has certainly been one of my favorite episodes. Have a great rest of your weekends, folks.